The issues of the day into clear focus through the lens of a Judeo-Christian worldview. And now, here is your host, Brannon Howse.
And welcome to the broadcast on this Wednesday night, October 22nd, 2025. Chris Martenson is going to join us tonight from Peak Prosperity. He was with us for our national conference, October 3rd and 4th. We're going to have him on tonight, first time since he was with us here in town. And we're going to talk about cattle prices, the ranchers, where all that's going, because President Trump today had some things to say about that. Sadly, he kind of seemed to tell the ranchers twice. They don't get it. They don't understand. I think it's the other way around. And many of America's ranchers and many of Trump's supporters, some of them who have gotten pretty good access to the White House, are pushing back against him tonight. You're going to want to get caught up on that. We're also going to talk about our debt crossing about $38 trillion now. Where is that going? Where is inflation going? What is the rate of inflation? Silver and gold are going up. Gold and silver had a little bit of a pullback, but I think that's a good thing. Anything goes straight up has to come back down pretty hard. So up, down, up, down. And I think you're going to see it continuing to move its way up as it builds floors. But where is inflation really going? If this trend continues, in 2055, what will it cost for the average house in America? If the last 30 years are any indication to the next, what will a house cost in 2055? What will a car cost? I got a clip I got to play for you tonight. Get Chris to respond. And how should people be preparing for this? And what is going on with Venezuela? Why is President Trump bombing the narco terrorists? Why not just arrest them? Isn't that what our Coast Guard is for? Why not just arrest them? Why are we bombing them? Does this have anything to do with trying to chase China out of America's backyard and also to have regime change and take the assets, the minerals, the oil, and put it on America's ledger as we move toward away from a debt-based system to an asset-based system? I want to ask Chris about that. I also want to ask David Pyne. He hasn't been on with us for a few weeks. He's going to come back tonight, talk about President Trump has canceled his Budapest meeting with Vladimir Putin. Why? You'll find out. It looks like Zelensky doesn't want to cut a deal, give up a little land, and survive as a nation. Probably not a smart idea on Zelensky's part. And so there's no meeting of the minds. So no need for President Trump to get involved. So where is this going? How big is Russia's army compared to Ukraine? How many people do they have to throw at this versus Ukraine? And doesn't the math just simply tell you then where this is going? We'll ask David Pyne about all that as well. And then Anni Cyrus joins us. Another very troubling situation, and that is an ambassador, the mayor of Hamtramck, Michigan. It's a Muslim dude. That's a Muslim-run town. You guys all know that. That's a Muslim dude. And we have a problem because this Muslim mayor, his name is Amir Ghalib. I guess he has just been appointed to be an ambassador to Kuwait by President Trump. Isn't this guy basically pro-Hamas? Why is he being appointed an ambassador to Kuwait? Why is it the Muslims are getting more and more access to the White House and on faith-based community commissions, et cetera, et cetera? All of this is very troubling, very troubling. Even Laura Loomer, who again has been a big supporter of President Trump, is really sounding off about that today. And so I want to talk to Anni Cyrus about that as well. Now, before we get started tonight, as always, remember about this right here, Worldview Report, your daily aggregated news site. We put up so much news and information here for you guys at worldviewreport.com. A lot of stories we just don't have time to cover every night. I can't be on air 3-4 hours a night. So there's a lot we don't ever get to, but I post it there for you at worldviewreport.com, worldviewreport.com. And just remember, you can always go to Worldview Tube. You can always go to Worldview Tube, and you can always catch these various shows on demand, loaded up there for you at worldviewtube.com. And don't forget, we also have a news page where we turn a lot of our shows into news articles for you to read as well. So there's Worldview Tube, that's TV, worldviewradio.com, that's radio, worldviewtimes.com, that's articles for you. It's all there. It's all free. It's all brought to you. Well, when you support us, a couple ways. One is through our foundation, worldviewfoundation.com. We have to have a big end of the year. November, December needs to be, as Donald Trump would say, huge. We need it to be huge. We need a big November and December, folks. And if we don't have a big November and December, it's going to start impacting how many programs we can produce, because we have to pay the guys in the control room to produce all these different shows. We've already had to let J.J. Carroll's program go. We were losing money on that broadcast. And we're losing money on a few others, but we keep them going because we believe the content is worth it. But at the very least, we want to try to break even. But our foundation comes along and helps us push out free Christian worldview programming, so we don't have to always think about the dollar figure and say, well, is this a good program? Yes, it is. We need to get this information out there. Should we put everything behind a paywall and charge the dollar? No, we don't want to think about the dollar. Let's push it out there for free as broadcast service, education, and ministry. Our foundation helps us do that. Yes, we have a paywall, but you guys get to watch so much of what we do automatically on the live stream, and then we put it back up online for you to watch again if you missed it or want to share it with family and friends. Again, all brought to you in part by our biggest sponsor, really, our foundation, worldviewfoundation.com. You'll also find our mailing address there if you prefer to support us through the mail. And our phone number's there too if you prefer to call and leave a voicemail or text Melissa. She'll get back to you and help you to make a contribution over the phone. Of course, then there's worldviewtube.com/sponsors. I already took my Bella Grace today. I take it each and every day. worldviewtube.com/sponsors. You know all about it. worldviewtube.com/sponsors. Yes, there's the Bella Grace. And yes, they have the Bella Melts. Ooh, those are flying off the shelf. The Bella Melts with GLP-1 curbing your appetite. Also supposed to help you burn calories and all kinds of other benefits. You can check it out at melissahousebg.com, melissahousebg.com. So I take the elixir every day. Melissa takes the Bella Melt. She loves that. And of course, she uses the skincare. She loves the Bella Grace skincare. She's using that every day. And so again, a lot of great products there at worldviewtube.com/sponsors. And one of them is melissahousebg.com, melissahousebg.com. Now, you definitely want to get your wellness kit, folks, because as I talked about in the Worldview Report tonight, we are so dependent on so many of our important meds, including antibiotics like amoxicillin, on China. And so if we have a disruption in just-in-time inventory, or we get into a scuffle with them, or they decide to really turn on us, folks, can you imagine being without simple amoxicillin when you have to have it? Now, it's not a good idea to overdo it on the antibiotics, but when you need one, it can be life or death. So I urge you to do what we do, which is we keep several of the wellness kits on hand. Go to worldviewhealthcare.com, worldviewhealthcare.com. Get your wellness kits. There are all kinds of other kits there as well, including ones for kids and so many that have like a EpiPen. There's your emergency kit for kids with an EpiPen. And of course, then they have the Wellness Select, $9.99 per month. Get you access on everyday savings and all supplements and emergency kits. The Enhanced, $49.99 a month. You get free prescriptions, pharmacy coaching, $99.99 a month. Get you the free prescriptions, pharmacy coaching, and the free supplements. Doesn't take long before you've saved that $99 with the free supplements. So check all that out at worldviewhealthcare.com. And of course, remember, precious metals, it's had a big dip. Maybe this is the time to jump in and buy over there at worldviewgold.com, putting gold in your IRA or taking physical possession. Worldviewgold.com, fill out the form, get a free pack, or text Wes your address, 602-558-8585, 602-558-8585. Swish for life. I do it each and every day. This is the glutathione to detox my cells, so we can get the poisons out of our cells, out of our system. In fact, glutathione studies have shown 165,000 studies on glutathione. So good for you. Studies show it may remove mercury from your brain, helping prevent Alzheimer's, dementia, and Parkinson's. So check that out. And then, of course, there's the Worldview Talk. I have my satellite phone. Check. Solar generator. Yeah, got one of those. I got the bulletproof backpack. Yep. There's also the blankets and the beanies to knock down EMF. But these are not luxury items. These are essentials. Particularly if the power grid goes down, cell towers go down, you can still charge your stuff and on the solar generators and still talk to family that have a satellite phone if the cell towers are all down. You can also, by the way, get a Starlink for free when you sign up for one of their very easy payment monthly programs, and you get the Starlink for free. They also have a portable Starlink. So if you have a cabin or a hunting cabin or an RV, and you don't want to buy for the cabin another cable or satellite, you don't have to. Get the portable Starlink, and obviously you can take that with you in your RV. So a portable Starlink. We have the portable Starlink that we use for the company here. So again, you get a free one when you sign up for one of their very reasonable monthly plans on Starlink with Tina Blanco of worldviewtalk.com, worldviewtalk.com. Oh, the water purifiers. We sell quite a few of these, and well, we should, because who wants to drink all these nasty poisons, right? Arsenic, fluoride, lead, all these other toxins in your water. Yeah, I have one on my kitchen sink. I have one on the shower because I don't want to shower in this garbage either. And of course, this is what I use to make our coffee. This is the water Dolly gets to drink and our other fur babies. So get one of the great water filters at worldviewwater.net, worldviewwater.net. And again, you'll find all of our sponsors at worldviewtube.com/sponsors, worldviewtube.com/sponsors. Joining me now is Chris Martenson. He was just with us a couple weeks ago at our National Worldview Weekend. And by the way, all those keynote presentations are in the vault at worldviewtube.com/vault, worldviewtube.com/vault. Chris joins us tonight. Chris, welcome back to the broadcast. Thanks for being with us.
Brannon, it's a real pleasure to be back. Good to see you again.
You too, my friend. I want to go to talk about economics with you because that's how I first found out about you years ago with Peak Prosperity when you were being interviewed by Jim Palava regularly on the Financial Sense Hour. Let's talk about inflation. I think you've been talking about that over on your X account. Where are we going with inflation? We saw gold prices shot up quite high. Today, I think they dropped like $250 yesterday. They're at around over $4,100. We're still over $4,100 an ounce for gold. Silvers are still headed toward about $49 at $48.70 something. I think that's a little dip. I think it'll just keep going back up eventually. We needed a correction. With what's happening to gold, I guess it tells us a lot about the dollar, does it not? Number one. And number two, where do you see inflation going? President Trump's saying, hey, look, I got inflation under control. Is that true?
Well, let's talk about inflation real quick, because a lot of people, and mistakenly, and for good reason, get it all confused with rising prices, right? Because that's what it's always presented as. Like, what's the cost of eggs? What's the cost of gas? What's the cost of a house? These are sort of the things that are presented as if that's inflation, but let's back up a step. Inflation, as Milton Friedman said, is everywhere and always a monetary phenomenon. So what's inflation? Well, we're making more money than goods or services. So you just print money, spend it into existence, and guess what? Then prices go up, and the government shrugs, and the Fed shrugs, and they pretend like it's a comet, and we're all Romans, and we don't know where these things come from, right? But it's a matter of policy, and so I can tell you very simply, the policy of the Fed is at least 2% inflation. They've missed that for 54 months in a row. They're closer to 3 to 4% by official numbers. 5, 6, 7% by my own numbers and other people who look at this closely.
Yes.
So we're going to get more inflation, lots more inflation. And it's going to be higher than the government is admitting to you because the BLS statistics are fraudulent. And that's a whole episode all on its own. But everybody knows that, I think, intuitively. Your inflation has not been going up at 3 or 4% over the past year.
Yes, and I agree with you, at least 5, 7%. Now, look, we have the word that the Treasury Department just bought back $1.9 billion of its own debt. Now, this is how you create inflation, right?
Well, this is even a slightly more sinister to me, and it's in the sense that what they're saying is this is funny. This is so Orwellian. The Treasury Department says that they're buying back their own debt to help manage cash. That's like a Coke addict saying that every so often they sell a little Coke to manage their supply. The Treasury is always burning through cash it doesn't have. $2 trillion a year. It doesn't have to buy back its own Treasury issues to manage cash. That's not the issue. So what is it doing? Well, what it's doing is it's bailing out banks who happen to have bought up a lot of Treasury debt in those years when we had what was called ZIRP, zero interest rate policy, ZIRP, ZIRP by the Fed. So they're sitting on 10-year treasuries in some cases that yield 1%, 0.75%. Currently, those would yield about 4%. So what do? Well, in order to maintain the idea that there's a market for 0.75% yielding U.S. 10-year debt, the Treasury is stepping in to make the market. So that's what they're doing. They're kind of bailing out banks, they're bailing out financial institutions, and they're also making it look like there's a market for something that really it's pretty thin. Nobody really wants those things right now. Why would you?
Yeah, why would you? Okay, so where do you think we're going with the Trump administration? Has he been brought in? This is what Leo Holman and I, before he was elected, were pontificating. What if Trump is allowed to win because he's the guy to oversee the crash of the U.S. economy? That he's going to be the one that can sell us digital IDs and all of this stuff that Kamala could never sell. She couldn't sell a life jacket to a drowning man. But Trump can be brought in to sell it. And this golden age and all the words they're using, right, to call it different great names, it's really just selling us the reset of the Great Reset, the reset of the currency, the dollar, everything. And he's the guy who's been brought in to sell it to us. That's what Leo and I were saying before the election as one possibility, that maybe they'll let him win. If they can rig elections, why then will they not rig it? Well, it's too big to rig. Others say, no, Brannon, it's never too big to rig. They can do it. And so, okay, if it's not too big to rig, then they're going to let him win. If so, why would they let him win? Because he's going to be the guy to sell it to us. I don't know. We just had all kinds of theories. What do you think now that we're 10 months into this?
Well, this is a hard one for me, Brandon, because I'm of the mind that I'm old enough now, having lived through, as an adult, I saw Clinton, I saw George W. Bush, I saw Obama, and there's no daylight in any of their policies, Democrat, Republican, Democrat, Biden, Trump. We end up with the same policies over and over again, right? So it's the same policy of let's just, bomb countries, and there's always a reason. It's always very, very important, but we spend a lot of money on that. And the policy always seems to be let Wall Street get away with whatever it wants to get away with. It can run the biggest scams ever. Nobody ever goes to prison, right? So we've been watching this play out my entire adult life. And so I'm not sure that any particular president actually bends the arc of history all that much, because I think we're in the hands of the deep state at this point in time. They have a plan. They have a direction they want to take us. And one of these things involves this thing called the Great Reset. So your audience is smart. You're smart. I'm smart. We can all sit down and look at, leaving aside presidents, Democrat, Republican, all that. Those might just be distractions. Here's the main game. We've been running a fiat debt-based money system since August 15th, 1971, when Nixon temporarily suspended the gold window. Okay, it's been temporarily closed ever since. So that opened up and ushered in this era where, wow, we're not really tethered by anything. We don't have to, it doesn't matter how much gold we have or don't have. We'll just, it's full faith and credit, baby. We'll just issue treasuries, we'll go into debt, and that's the model. And that worked pretty well for a while. And in fact, it worked longer than it should, because evil genius Kissinger, I think a horrible man, but a genius. He set up this thing called the petrodollar, 1973. Right? We've just come off the gold standard. What is the dollar really backed by? Well, he makes this secret agreement with Saudi Arabia. Hey, y'all can sell as much oil as you want, but only for dollars. And by the way, it'd be great if those dollars never left our country, right? Because we were importing a lot of oil from Saudi Arabia. So they sell oil to us back in the 70s, 80s, 90s. And those dollars would go from a server in a bank in New York to another server in a bank in New York. And Saudi Arabia now owns a lot of treasuries and U.S. stocks and things like that. That was the game. That game is just about up now. We're about, 54 years into that experiment of seeing, can you run a completely unbacked currency? The answer is you can until you get too much debt. And it's just unpayable at this point. So people focus on, I don't know what the number is today, it's probably around 38 trillion. That's the number for federal debt. That's just federal debt. We have a trade deficit on a yearly basis that if it was a country would be the 19th largest economy in the world. And that's just international debt going off. We are hemorrhaging as a nation. So anybody who's in this business looks at the numbers, Brannon, can go, wow, this has an expiration date on it. It's going to break anyway, independent of who's in office. And they know that. So now when you say, why is gold going up? I could make somewhat of a case it's going up a little bit because, of inflation, but they've had that under control for decades. Why did it start to break and break north in 2022? Well, probably because the Biden administration abrogated on the most sacred of all international contracts and they froze Russia's sovereign reserves, proving they weren't sovereign, they weren't reserves, and that broke the contract. Now, when you unilaterally break a contract, whether you think you have a good reason for it or not, it has enormous consequences. And one of those consequences was gold broke every relationship that I've been following for decades. It's a beautiful, perfect correlated, inverse correlated with real yields. It's an anti-dollar. Like you could just track a couple things and you knew exactly what the price of gold was, but not since 2022. So this latest thing we're seeing here with this, spike of gold here in 2025, that's actually 3 years in the making, and it's telling us something more important than inflation. It's saying that the dollar experiment is now entering a new phase where people have lost faith in the full faith and credit of the United States. And that's why when we get to Trump, we say, gosh, you'd want to be kind of careful when you're negotiating with your biggest trading partners like China. You'd want to be careful because we kind of need them to take our dollars and send us stuff, right? That's the deal. Well, they've been getting rid of their dollars for at least 6 years now, and they're not recycling them into anything we can identify. What are they buying? Well, mostly gold and oil and trade deals with other countries around the world. So that's where we're at right now. And I believe that when we look at something like the Great Reset, that's simply some smart people sitting down going, look, this thing is going to break anyway. We made some bad decisions. We have decades of terrible decisions, starting with Nixon, but carrying on through every administration. And now the piper is due. So what do? Well, nothing or something. Nothing is you let it break. You have a lot of unhappy people. That's called revolution. Political dynasties are shattered. Maybe even Nancy Pelosi doesn't get reelected, something really terrible like that, right? I'm being sarcastic, of course. Or you do something, and that something is you have to have people corralled in a digital prison. You have to. Or they could, I don't know, decide for themselves that they're unhappy with their leaders and say, we want new leaders, which is unacceptable to the DC crew. So that's how I see the whole thing coming together. This is literally a fuse that was lit in 1971, and I think it's just about reached the dynamite.
Just about reached the dynamite. And so where do you see gold going? Before you answer that question, here's the clip I saw the other day. Now, this clip may seem a little like, okay, these guys are out of their mind. But think about a home in 1965 and what it cost in your market, folks. So I don't know where you live, but wherever it is you live, type into a search engine, what was the average price of a home in Dallas, Texas, in Los Angeles, California, in, some suburb of, some suburb of New York City, New Rochelle, Dick Van Dyke. I know what the average home cost in 1965 in East Memphis. That's a very nice East Memphis, snuggled up right next to the Germantown line. It's a very nice part of East Memphis, or of the Memphis metro area. And the average home, and we're talking 3 bedrooms, wood floor throughout, maybe 2,100 square feet, was about $20,000 in 1965. I actually looked up a house the other day for a friend of mine. He bought a house. He's in his 80s now. I think he's about to turn 80. And he bought a house back in the 70s. And he told me what he bought for it. And while he was talking, I went and looked up online what that house would go for today, and he couldn't believe it because he told me what he paid for it and what it was worth today. But seriously, folks, home prices are different depending on where you're at. But you could buy a really nice 3-bedroom brick throughout, a brick home, wood floor throughout, 3-bedroom, 2,100 square feet in East Memphis in 1965 for $22,000. Today, that house would be, depending on where it was needing to be remodeled, $265 to $300, depending on, what does it need to have the countertops ripped out, quartz put in, different things like that. Cabinets redone, new appliances. But if you were to tell someone in 1965, hey, the house you just bought for $20,000, in 2025, that will sell for $265 to $300, they would think you were smoking way too much, silly weed, pot. You're drunk. You're out of your mind, right? So will those trends hold, do you think? Because watch this video and see what you think, Chris, and then you can tell me where you think relatively then, where is gold and silver and the prices of houses and hard assets going, which again is how people protect the wealth they built by being in hard assets. That's kind of the point. Listen and watch. Here we go, guys.
30 years are like the last. By 2025, you will see prices like this.
Okay.
An average house in 2055, what do you think it will cost? First of all, what do you think a house costs right now, average house?
I'll go $350,000.
Okay, I don't know the answer to that, but the average house in 2055, what do you think it should be?
It should be maybe $600,000.
Whoa, double.
Yeah, 200% increase.
If the next 30 years are like the last 30 years, the average house will cost $1.6 million.
Yeah, no, that's painful and that hurts.
Yeah, we're on a sad decline here.
This is the truth here. Well, inflation, right?
That's not inflation. That's like astronomical inflation.
Yeah, it's bad.
How much do you think a new car will cost in 2055?
In 2055, a new car will cost $35,000.
Okay, a new car, if the 30 years are like the last 30 years, will cost $218,165.
I can't afford that, Brian.
Which is the cost of like a very small house in New Jersey.
Oh my goodness.
Guess how much average rent will be in 2055?
Let's go $4.5 thousand.
It's going to cost $6,500 per month in 2055.
I'm trying to guess with you,
How much do you think a cup of coffee will cost in 2055?
Oh, you mean a cup of Joe?
Cup of Joe, that you're addicted to.
$8.90.
$28 a cup.
No, that's can't be real.
It is 100% real.
Oh my goodness.
How much do you think a gallon of gasoline will cost in 2055?
Gallon of gas here in New Jersey is $3. In like LA, it's like $6 or $7. Let's go with $7 or $8.
$16 a gallon.
Yeah, insane.
And then the opposite way, guess how much minimum wage will be in 2055 comparatively to all these prices?
Yeah, it's not going to be as high. $35.
No, $12.36 per hour.
Across the country.
How are you going to afford a $1.6 million house? How much do you think an average household income will be in 2055?
Let's go 200. So let's go $1 million.
$92,702.
I don't know why I was trying to inflate it like you did the other thing.
No, because salary's not going up, but the price of everything is going up. That's the point here, and it sucks. If the next...
All right, so what do you make of that, Chris?
Oh, that was really well done. I like the pacing, the style. I like their examples. That was good repartee. So kudos for production, but they're absolutely right. And that's only if inflation continues as it has been. I think we're going to be facing actually much, much steeper, faster, higher inflation for a lot of reasons.
So you think their numbers are low?
Yes, yeah, they probably are. Right, but let's take it. We were talking about gold a second ago. I have an example. So a good friend of mine, Tom, he lives in the Phoenix area, and in 2017 he bought a home, and he was just looking on Zillow, and it cost twice as much according to this estimate. Right, twice as much. It had basically gone from, I'll make some numbers up, from just about $1 million to $2 million. Right, it's like, whoa, I have $2 million, but I've been coaching him for a while, and he'd been buying gold, and he finally ran the numbers. He said, it would have cost me this many ounces of gold in 2017, runs the numbers, the exact same number of ounces of gold today. It's the same number. So nothing really happened. So when we say the prices of homes are going up, we got to flip that, because that's not what's happening. It's the value of our dollar declining.
Correct.
And it's picking up steam right now. So if I could show you something, I love this. This is in Weimar, Germany, one of the most famous periods of hyperinflationary collapse we know about, right? And so that's when you saw those old black and white photos of people with wheelbarrows of cash and, stuffing pale paper notes into the furnace because it was worth more as firewood than paper money. But here you can see what we've been going through is, you had this little run up 1918 to 1919, and they said, oh, gold is overbought, and it corrected. Oh no, people who bought here at like $12 an ounce and it went back to like 10. That was terrible, awful. And then they said gold is going nowhere all the way through 1921, nothing. And then they say, oh, gold is effed right here. Nothing's happening. And then, oh, gold's going to collapse, and it does this. But this is a log scale. So gold was worth 10 times as much in each one of these increments, 10 times as much. And this is what it looks like at the end. So the saw on this is, somebody asked Hemingway, how did you go broke? And he said, slowly, then all at once, right? So that's what that steep part of that curve is. That's the all at once phase. The Trump administration came in, they had, big things. They're going to do this Doge. There were $2 extra trillion slapped onto federal expenditures because of COVID. Let's just dial that back. It went from 4 to 6. Let's get those 2 back. They tried that. They did Doge for a month. It was wildly successful, maybe too successful for political interests. So they canned it. And then they threw in the towel completely and said, nah, we're going to grow the economy, right? Which means they're not going to cut spending. Then they passed the big, beautiful bill, and we are now locked into another $25 trillion of new debt minimum over the next 10 years. It's going to happen. 25 trillion, that's a lot. Where does that come from? Well, the Fed prints it up. What happens when you print too much money? It looks like this eventually. So when people ask me, Chris, could gold get to 5,000 an ounce? 6,000? Could it get to 7,000? If we get into a hyperinflationary situation like this, Brannon, there'll be numbers that won't even make sense to you and me, right? They'll be silly numbers. But that's what those two gentlemen were talking about. Inflation is coming in. There's nothing they can do at this point. There's nothing they can do because we would need real leadership. Here's what real leadership would sound like. They would say, nation, really sorry to have to tell you this, but we, the leaders, really dropped the ball. We should have been actually running balanced budgets decades ago, but we didn't. We thought we could always be running perpetual deficits. It turned out we couldn't. And now we got this AI stuff coming along, which is going to take jobs, which is deflationary. That's terrible. I mean, in terms of people earning money, what do? Sorry, we can't pay all this money back. So our choices now are either let the money system burn to the ground, which destroys everybody, or we go into austerity, which means we live beyond our means. Now we have to live below our means. Nobody's going to like that. Everybody's going to hate that. Politicians will lose their jobs, so we're not going to do that. Right? I guess what I'm saying here is that there aren't any good options. It's like left exit or right exit, inflation or a really painful deflation. And neither is a good option at this point in time. And that's what Trump is stuck with at this particular moment in time.
So this is, of course, why we talk a lot here about hard assets, right? Because it's not about making money. It's just about trying to preserve your wealth that you've created for your family. And, your wealth may be 10,000, 20,000, 100,000. It may be $1 million, whatever it is. You're trying to put it somewhere so it won't be destroyed by inflation. So let's assume we're going down the path you're talking about. At what point do the pitchforks and torches come out? And I can't believe I said on radio today again. I can because I understand apathy and passivity because the American people have been brainwashed and dumbed down, and they've been coerced through group consensus that this is liberty, this is freedom, that this is the way it's supposed to be. But our founding fathers, if they were allowed to come back for a couple of days, would look around and go, are you kidding me? You people think you're free? You are so enslaved, but you don't even realize how enslaved you are. You can't even build a back porch without going through a bunch of red tape with your local government. But let's go on and talk about the federal government, where they're robbing you guys blind. They're financially raping you. They make you get up every day, work, and take 40%, 40% of your income. Then you add in local and state taxes, 50% of your income, plus the hidden taxes, plus inflation, which is another hidden tax. And you guys go along like your life is great. We fought a revolution over far less than this. And then that same government is killing your own people with COVID shots and bioweapons and so-called vaccines. And they're giving billions and billions and trillions of dollars to foreign countries that hate our guts. You're letting countries that want to kill you, that are funding terrorism, build military bases in the U.S. There's an elite that is financially raping the country, laundering money, and enriching themselves. And you guys just go along with it. Like, yeah, this is great. We love it. We love being raped by the federal government, not to mention our state governments. But at some point, is this not going to be pitchforks and torches?
I think we're already there, but let me set it up by saying that, and here's why. First off, I was just reading some history recently, and it turned out that back in our founding fathers' time, guys would get together at the local tavern, and they would talk like philosophers and Renaissance men about all different sorts of things, so that you could have somebody at the age of 33 write the Declaration of Independence, right? In our society today, somebody who's 33 is a man-child, barely grown up, hardly trusted with anything at this point in time. But it was different. People had the context. They knew what they were talking about. They could discuss monetary policy, foreign policy. They would have all these interests, right? So there's very few people who can have that conversation. And that, I think, has been done on purpose because our education system has specifically been dumbing us down. And so it's won. I think it's already won the battle. So I say the pitchforks are out because people are right. They're angry. They have been systematically abused. All those things you just mentioned, right? Those are all of those individual liberty usurpations, right? It's already happened and they can feel it. Their lives are harder and harder and it's not working. But because they lack the context, Brannon, they blame the wrong people. So they elect a Mamdani in New York, and he's going to promise to soak the rich people, who are the only people paying the bills in New York, who will flee New York. And it'll get worse and worse and worse, and they'll continue to blame the wrong people. And who should they be blaming? Well, your politicians and your Federal Reserve, who has specifically, as a matter of policy, ignited inflation over and over and over again, rescued financial markets so that they don't take any losses, them and their friends, right? And they throw everybody else under the wheels of the bus. The people who took entire generations and said, yeah, you shouldn't have children or form a household, not important to us, not as important is making sure that Wall Street gets their bonuses this year and JP Morgan has a really fat trading bonus. I mean, it's just, this is the situation we're in, and you're right. If people could get that cold dash of water on their face, of reality, they would go, this is unacceptable. It really is. But make no mistake, this path always ends badly for the nations that pursue it. It was Plutarch himself, 2,500 years ago, said the oldest and most fatal ailment of all republics is a gap between the rich and the poor. And by rich, I don't mean people who are working harder and applying themselves and saving, and that's why they're rich. I mean people who go out, click a few buttons, sit next to the Federal Reserve's magic money printing machines. They, are financial types, right? Let me get this. Private equity, right? This headline just came out last week. There are now more private equity firms in the United States than McDonald's outlet franchises. And what does private equity do? Well, if you tried to buy cement recently in the Georgia area, you would discover it's tripled in price because a private equity firm bought up all the local cement companies and then jacked the price up. You will notice the same thing going on with veterinary services at this point. You'll notice the same thing going on with HVAC, on and on and on. Hospitals, like, why are private hospital costs going up so much? Because a private equity firm bought it and they want a return for their shareholders and their capital. We've become a financial nation, not a nation of producers. And then, okay, so that's what we do. That's what we do really well. There's a turnip out there. That's you and me getting squeezed on a daily basis. And somehow we're going to reshore manufacturing, compete with China, who are mercantilist business people extraordinaire. And so, like, it's not even a fair competition at this point in time. We're going to lose. If we get in a war with China, Brannon, we've already lost that war because they'll out-manufacture us 10-1.
Not to mention, as I discussed on the Worldview Report tonight, they make the basic chemicals needed for things like amoxicillin, antibiotics. So how quick can we bring that home and get that going? We will be in a big trouble. People will be dying of things otherwise we just take a pill for.
Well, it's not as easy as just saying, oh, let's bring it home.
Exactly.
And calling up, Indeed.com or Monster.com and saying, I need 3,000 pharmaceutical engineers on a pilot plant scale. We need people who can cast 12-ton locomotive blocks for new diesel engines for locomotives. We need to build those again. Hey, we'd like, none of that. We don't have that expertise right now. It takes generations to get that back once you lose it, right? Because it's a whole process of mentors and apprentices and journeymen. And there's a whole thing right there. Once you lose it, it can take 2 to 3 generations to get it back running again. But that's what China has done. So, I really wish somebody was looking at this. And so you asked about Trump and what's my opinion. I came in with a lot of hopes. Nobody's been arrested yet. We're now bombing mysterious countries all over the place. I don't get it. We've thrown in the towel on trying to save money. So it's all money printing at this point, deficit spending. And I look at all these things and I'm trying to find a coherent pattern to say, okay, here's how we thread this needle. And I can't see it at this point in time is my problem. So I'm a very optimistic guy. I do things in a very optimistic way in my overall life, but I don't see where this is going yet. And I can't figure out what the plan is. And if there is a plan, I wish they'd share it with us because it doesn't make sense right now, And so until I see that plan, here's the deal. M2, which is a broad measure of money, is exploding like crazy. The government's deficit spending like crazy. The Federal Reserve has just said that it's going to throw in the towel on reducing its balance sheet. So that's over. We're probably just a matter of months away from actively doing quantitative easing again, which is a fancy name for money printing. When the money printing starts, people are going to either be in hard assets or they're not going to be in hard assets. I think it's getting that simple at this point.
Okay, so tell me, what do you think about energy prices? Because I'm hearing people say that due to all the data centers, your energy bill is going to be equal to a mortgage or to your rent. Is that overblown or is that true?
Well, it's absolutely true already in some places. So two things. First, nationally, electricity prices have gone up 35% in the last 3 years. But that's an average. So if you live more than 50 miles from a data center, you probably haven't seen anything close to that. But if you live in northern New Jersey or northern Virginia, where you are very close to data centers, your electricity bills might have gone up not 100%, meaning they doubled. They would have gone up 200%. So they've tripled in essence. So a lot of people out there used to have, $300 a month. Now they're paying $900 a month for electricity. That's what that means. And so that trend is going to continue. We are all subsidizing this so-called AI boom with all this capital and all these billionaires, right? We're subsidizing it with our electricity bills. And that's going to continue because when you peel it back, there aren't that many ways to make new electricity, right? So we're going to have to build a lot of electricity capacity production soon. What can we do? Nuclear? Nah. Yes, we should do it, but nah, because it's super highly regulated. The NRC is probably the most bloated bureaucracy in the entirety of the United States, and it's in competition with HUD, Department of Education, stuff like that, right? It's terrible. So it's going to be slow. And of course, people will fight it because they'll all say, not in my backyard and all that. So nuclear, probably not coming online in the next few years, right? So, okay. Coal? No way. No way. We've already narrative policed that one out of existence. Can't have coal. It's dirty and it's going to bake the polar bears or whatever. So that's out. So it's going to be natural gas. This is where it gets really awkward. United States natural gas production has only gone up less than 1% over the past year and a half. And it has to go up by something like 12 or 13% just to meet the liquefied natural gas plants that are being constructed right now to ship that over to Germany and France and other places like that. Little unclear where that 12 to 13% is going to come from. And then there's probably another 8 or 9% that has to come out of the ground so that we can begin to power all of these data centers. And just to be clear about this, when I say a data center, if I say a kind of a medium-sized one right now would be what's called a 1 gigawatt center. It needs 1 billion watts of power funneling into it 24/7. A gigawatt is the same amount of electricity as the entire city of Denver consumes. So we're basically slapping in these 1, 2, 3. They even have conceived 5, 6 gigawatt centers now. They're massive. They're going to take enormous amounts of energy. And again, if they have a plan for where all this natural gas is just magically going to come out of the ground, I have not seen it. And so there's a lot of concern out there, and the people who are on the operator side saying, well, we're not sure how we're going to supply all of this. So yes, energy is going to be an enormous story. It's not yet on most people's radar, but this, I think, is going to be the big story of the next 2 to 3 years, like starting now, but carrying forward. And again, it's just a failure to plan. So that's where we're at.
Thank you for that. Now, President Trump put out this today that he talked about cattle ranchers who I love don't understand that the only reason they're doing so well for the first time in decades is because I put tariffs on cattle coming in the United States, including 50% tariff on Brazil. If it weren't for me, they would be doing just as they've been done for the past 20 years. Terrible. It would be nice if they would understand that, but they also have to get their prices down because the consumer is a very big factor in my thinking also. Well, I don't know who let him put that out, but he's getting really a lot of pushback online today over this. I dealt with it on radio because, as I said on radio today, at my opening monologue, Brazil and China apparently are dominating the meat packing plants, a lot of them. And they're the ones that are this bad actor in the whole scenario that are making the money. It's not the cattle ranchers. They can't afford to bring their prices down. They need to be building up their herds and they need capital to do it. And he's saying, you guys need to understand. You don't understand. He says twice, you don't understand. No, President Trump is apparently the guy that doesn't understand. And the American cattle guys are online today reading him the Riot Act. We love you. We voted for you. We support you. But you are so wrong on this that, I read this on the air today. And I got to read it again because this is exactly what I said in my monologue. And I'm like, I'm not an expert on this. But I knew enough over the last few years to get this right. Daniel Horowitz wrote, if anything, you'd be more justified in encouraging imports of cattle to build up domestic herds, which desperately need more heads. What you don't want to do is encourage import of beef. This is the general rule Trump has with understanding tariffs. He goes just as severe, and in some cases more severe, on the raw materials and inputs that are needed to bolster American producers than the final products. And then I have another guy who I thought you put it in the bookmarks, Logan. Someone wrote, which one was it? This guy here? Oh, yeah, here we go. This guy right here, Farm Action. The 4 big meat packers, including Brazil's JBS and Marfrig, control beef prices, not American cattle ranchers. These global corporations have been making record profits off U.S. consumers while squeezing independent ranchers out of business. Importing more beef will only make that worse. We urge you to reinstate mandatory country of origin labeling. Right now, millions of pounds of imported beef enter our market with no label at all, undercutting U.S. ranchers and misleading consumers. You should also investigate the big 4 packers for price fixing. 2 of them just settled a 2019 case after manipulating prices and cheating both ranchers and consumers. Instead of forcing cattle prices down, let's bring beef prices down by tackling consolidation, enforcing antitrust laws, and restoring fair competition. Ranchers need support to rebuild their herds. That's how we truly increase beef supply and lower prices long term. After years of drought, high input costs, and selling into a rigged market, we deserve policies that strengthen rural America, not ones that reward foreign competitors and corporate monopolies. At the end of the day, I hate to say this, but President Trump is not the genius, not the 5D chess. He's not the brilliant economist that many of his followers have made him out to be. Remember, this guy got himself $900 million in debt. I think it was the bankers that saved him because they figured they could write it out with him and all keep their shirts. But he is not a guy that has run traditional businesses, like produces a product and sells it. Okay, selling watches that you put your name on, selling board games that you put your name on. I'm talking about running an actual business you build from scratch, okay? God bless him. He's done very well for himself to a degree. But his dad got him going, loaned him some money, gave him some money, whatever. I don't know if, like many of the people who start out at the bottom and build a business, like you've done, like I've done, like many of the audience have done, if he understands basic economics 101. He understands financing, building codes, construction, architecture. He's brilliant at that, apparently, in the skyline. But I don't think he understands basic economics. Is that a fair assumption?
Well, based on that tweet he put out about the cattle situation, that's unbelievably ignorant. And anybody who had been in a basic, like a low margin cost pressure sort of an environment. I mean, listen, here's the deal. 2 years ago, it was announced that our cattle herd was the same size as in 1963, right? When we had basically 1/3 as many people. So obviously, when you have fewer cattle and just 3 times as many people, you have a problem there. You're going to have price pressures. That's part one. Part two, you read from the Cattlemen's Association, input costs have been going through the roof. It's unbelievable. Just property taxes alone on some of these ranches are now one of their top cost pressures out there. Of course, they have, depending on what kind of dry land or pasture raising they're doing, they're going to have all sorts of other input costs. You got your vet costs, right? Obviously, you got your hay costs if you have to carry them through the winter, all that. And I'm speaking with a little experience. I have 6 cows, right? We carry them through the winter. It's very expensive, right? So inflation has been going through the roof, and we have the drought as well. So there are a lot of pressures on them. And then meanwhile, the other thing that's been happening, Brandon, and this is across all commodities. This is all of them. Corn costs the same today as it did 15, 20 years ago. The same. I'm not talking inflation adjusted. I mean, the same nominal dollars. And of course, farmers have all these other same input costs. So the producers get squeezed like crazy, but the meat packing plants, the middlemen, the Cargills, the food stores, they do pretty well on this. And so the producers are always the people we dump on. We call them farmers, right? But that's a real problem. And what Trump just said there was like, oh, no, you guys just have to get, stop being idiots or whatever, whatever he put that. It's not good. Right. And so if I can, I'll show you this. Cows is one thing, but soybeans is another. Soybeans is our largest food export, bar none. Right. And China was 50% of our exports, just north of that, usually 51, 52%. And look what's happened here. Soybean sales to China went to 0 in May, and they haven't picked back up again. This is a disaster unfolding right now. Now, why did that happen? It happened because China was getting squeezed by Trump, and they said, okay, you want to do this tariff war thing? We're not going to be bullied. We're a big boy nation. We get to make our own decisions. We'll just go buy our soybeans elsewhere. So Trump came out just yesterday, put a tweet out and said, I understand it's bad for the soybean farmers. Tell you what, we'll take some of our tariffs. We'll make you all whole. Like whatever you lost this year, we'll just give you money. And the soybean farmers are like, if I lost $1 and you give me $1, I don't want your handout because I just lost my number one customer. That's worse. You can't get it back. When you lose that customer goes to Argentina, goes to Brazil. There are other places. So this is a disaster unfolding right now for the American farmers. And it's because this isn't 5D chess. I think we're looking at pigeon chess at this point in time. It's just not, it's not what I'm hoping.
So with that being said, you're going to have a lot of farmers losing their land. And I don't know if it's Acre Tracker and these other companies. I don't know if there's a move on to, have these farms go belly up and then rush in and grab the land and what they're going to do with it. But windmills, solar farms, what a joke that is. I mean, Bill Gates, these guys don't even want you eating cattle. Maybe they're just going to buy it and sit on it as a good hedge against inflation. And then take that once you don't have enough farmers and you're forced to buy their fake meat. I don't know. I'm trying to figure out what the play is here. Do you have any idea? Well,
Whether it's intentional or not, what's happening is the small and mid-sized farmers are being driven out of business. This is going to be a huge year. I think farm bankruptcies already here in October of 25 are exceeding last year, and last year was a bad year. So we're probably going to see many, many more bankruptcies. And whether that's a feature or a bug of the system, there are going to be people like private equity and all these big BlackRocks and Carlyles and whatnots, Bill Gates, who are going to swoop in and buy that farmland, right?
Here are your bankruptcies right here.
Yeah, it's awful. It's really, and it's going to get worse. Some of those haven't been announced yet, so it's going to be very bad this year. And this is a tragedy. Obviously, the strength of a nation is, your small and mid-sized farmers. Obviously, we don't want just giant, big agribusiness concerns. We don't just want tens of thousands of acre, giant ag business things. We want small, independent farms who are actually incentivized to grow great food that improves the earth while they do it at the same time. It's called regenerative farming. And by the way, what did we just find out through RFK is that our food in this country, in the United States, very specifically makes people sick for whatever sets of reasons, right? And I guarantee you, once China starts buying their soybeans from, say, I don't know, Brazil or Argentina, they're not coming back because we have GMO soybeans here and they're not the same. And I'm not putting hyperbole out there. I'm not just trying to shake a little like, here's some more fear stuff. It's an inferior product, and that's going to show up very quickly to them, and they're going to figure that out. It's more cost effective, but they're inferior products. And so we have a system of food production that makes people sick. And you've heard this over and over again. I hear this all the time. Friends of mine go over to Europe and say, oh, I don't feel good after eating bread, but I went over there and it was great and everything was fine. I lost a couple pounds. Like, we're going to have to get our food system back on track, and punishing our small and mid-sized farmers so they can be bought out by BlackRock is exactly the wrong thing to do.
And then the farm suicides are up. Farmer suicides are up. And then I was playing a
Nobody
video.
works harder than farmers. Nobody.
Yeah.
They work so hard, Brandon. They work so hard, and have all of that taken away because somebody does some ignorant stuff at the upper end. It's terrible. It's a huge tragedy.
Is President Trump, I asked this of Patrick Wood the other night. I'll tell you what he said after you answer. Is he going to go down, if this trend continues, as one of the most unpopular presidents in modern history?
Well, the direction we're on is going to lead to a pretty sizable economic disruption. Let me be euphemistic about it. No, this could end really catastrophically.
Are we talking?
And then, of course, yeah,
are we talking
Herbert Hoover. I mean, right?
Collapse?
Yeah, collapse. Like, we're talking like Great Depression, like capital D kind of a thing. And then you go down as a very unpopular president, right? For just that one reason alone.
Is that the end of capitalism in America? Well, we don't have capitalism right now. This is corporatism, communitarianism, big government, big business, fascism, whatever you want to call it. But it'll be painted as capitalism. And what I fear is they'll bring back all the stuff from the 1980s. Donald Trump living large, dancing, his helicopter, Trump Tower, the board games, all this stuff. The epitome of capitalism, Donald Trump. How did that end? Right? Crash and burn. And it'll be portrayed as Mr. Capitalist, Mr. Businessman. He came on board with all these great capitalist ideas and he destroyed America. You see, capitalism, but he and his family, their net worth increased by $3 billion. You see, capitalism doesn't work. Well, that's what they're going to do. The left is going to do that, right? And sell the American people to roll into what is really more fascism. We'll manufacture a problem and then we'll offer you the solution, which is going to be technocracy, transhumanism, which is still big government, big business working together for a form of socialism. I don't care what you call it. It's still going to be a form of socialism, globalism, international socialism. Now, I want to make clear, this is not capitalism. And what most of these guys are doing is not capitalism. It's corporatism, as I said. But you watch, if this goes down the way you're talking, it could go down. That will be what's in the textbooks for years to come, how capitalism finally destroyed America. Right?
And it'll go down that way because people won't have the appropriate context. Yep. They won't understand what actually happened. So, let's go to the headwaters of the denial on this story. The Federal Reserve. Nominally, it's just there to be the lender of last resort and make sure that banking panics don't happen, right? Okay, I can sort of get behind that idea, but over time, that the camel's nose got under the tent, and now they intervene in everything at all time, and they get together every 6 weeks and decide what the price of money should be, which is like, what? Shouldn't the market decide that? They are, Brandon, a reverse Robin Hood organization. They steal from the many. That's what inflation is. It steals from every bank account out there. Everybody who's listening to this is thieved by the Federal Reserve. So they steal from the many, and then they give it to the few, right? That's reverse Robin Hood. That's also communism. A few people get together and decide what the price of money should be or how much corn should be produced next year or steel in the old Soviet Union, right? That's what this is. It's just communism. We have to recognize it exactly for what it is, a small group of unelected people deciding what the most important determinant of a freedom-based transaction ought to be, which is what's the price of money between us? What's the risk? What's the interest rate? They just set that. And they set it to zero for year after year after year, which again, just took that fuse and cut some off and advanced the fuse a little bit faster. That was monetary vandalism. And if you were trying to harm the country, I don't know how you could have done a better job than what Ben Bernanke and Janet Yellen and now Jerome Powell have done. I just don't know how you could do a better job at it. And so people need to recognize that for what it is. And that's okay, because you can say, wow, they're running the dollar-based system badly, not like capitalism, not like a free exchange of price setting and goods and sellers and buyers, none of that. But you can recognize that and say, oh, I would rather not hold bad money, right? That's because that's what fiat US-based Federal Reserve notes are. It's bad money. I'd rather hold good money. And that's called Gresham's Law, when bad money drives out good, meaning we'll all take our bad money and like, how much here? Take it from me. I'd rather have anything else. I'll take an excavator, an ounce of silver, whatever. Doesn't matter. That's when you see that gold chart finally go ripping up to the top. It's because bad money is recognized as bad money. A lot of people catch the vibe, and all of a sudden they go, I want anything but this stuff. I'd rather have good money, which is what's money supposed to be. Its number one attribute is it's a store of value, meaning I put money aside today, and in 10 years, it's a store of value. The Federal Reserve tells us straight to our face, we're going to take your money and we're going to make it worth less on a yearly basis. We're guaranteeing you that. That's their promise. That's what a 2% inflation target is. Every 35 years, it gets cut in half. Oops, they sort of lost the handle on that one a little bit. So now we find our money losing 23% officially over the last 5 years, but honestly closer to 50% by every other measure I track. That tells you everything you need to know. You just can't trust that money. And that's a second characteristic of money. It has to be trustworthy. And the Federal Reserve has lost my trust. I don't think they'll ever get it back. And I don't know how they could. And that's where we are. So that's why I have cows and things like that, because I think we're at that part of the story.
Now, tell me about bailing out to the tune, I guess, of 20 billion Argentina. Are we bailing out their central bank? And aren't the central banks private banking organizations? Isn't that what Carol Quigley, who wrote the book in 1966, Tragedy and Hope, who mentored Bill Clinton at Georgetown, said? The apex of the New World Order will be the Bank for International Settlements, which for the new people is the central bank of central bankers based in Basel, Switzerland. It is private corporations that meet regularly to set economic policy for the Western, really industrialized societies. And we go as the Federal Reserve. So we're bailing out a central bank in Argentina, if I'm correct, which means we're bailing out private bankers. I guess the question would be, who are some of those investors? Would that include, BlackRock, Fidelity, any of these companies that we know of, part of that there in Argentina? So isn't this Donald Trump doing the banking and the business of the banking cartels if he bails them out to the tune of $20 billion? And how do we benefit from that?
Well, we won't. I mean, this was a currency swap, I believe. So what they did was they bought $20 billion of Argentinian pesos. And those have been just like hemorrhaging like crazy value against the dollar. So the whole idea was to sort of stabilize that a little bit and give Milei, the current president of Argentina, maybe a little bit more runway to try some of his programs out. Now, Argentina is actually pretty interesting because it's a very resource-rich nation. It's got a lot of areas to grow cattle, soybeans. They've got a very big shale oil play down there, but it's all more or less poorly run and undeveloped. So they have some opportunity to do well. I think what we have to look at this, though, is in the larger sweep of Argentina, plus what we're doing in Venezuela. We now know that CIA has been authorized under Trump to muck around in there and try and get some regime change going. We're blowing up boats in the open ocean, claiming that they're running drugs or something like that. And so you can just feel it, right? And it's almost kind of like, look, South America is going to have to be, we're going to have to get China out of there. China has very deep ties in there right now. So
is this a buyout to get China out of Argentina? Is this a buyout?
I think so. Yeah. There's a lot of things going on in various groups, but South America, I think we're making a play for it as a country. And when all the dust settles, I'd be surprised if we don't make a play for Alberta as well, because Venezuela has the second largest oil deposit in the world right now, the Orinoco Belts. And we need that stuff. And we're going to need what Alberta has as well, because the United States right now is entering its own senescence. It's our own peak of oil output from our shale plays. So we're going to have to make a play there one way or the other, I guess. I would prefer that we make friends. China does it by coming in with their magic checkbook. They're great business people. They may shaft you from time to time, but you pretty much know what the deal is, right? They will come in, build you an airport, a road, a port, give you some money, do some stuff, cut a deal that kind of works for both parties. We're coming in with military gunboats. It's a different kind of diplomacy. It's sort of been our way for a long time. but it's much harder to seize oil fields and make them work because they're kind of explodey and difficult to defend when you get right down to it. So I'm not sure that there's a comprehensive strategy here, but I'm starting to wonder if perhaps we're not seeing a play into South America. So you'll hear more about Colombia and Brazil and other things like that as time goes on.
So are we going to help them out, prop them up, and get mineral rights, and then add them to the ledger and tokenization? It seems like everything comes back to tokenization and our ledger. Who cares about our $200 trillion debt with off-record unfunded liabilities? You got your on-record $37 trillion, off-record altogether, maybe $200 trillion. Who cares? We're worth $600 trillion when you figure everything on the ledger. Is that the game they're playing?
Probably. You know, we've seen that big push for tokenization, but again, look at the players involved. So this includes people like Howard Lutnick and you know, BlackRock's Larry Fink and all these other cats, right? So what's tokenization? It's just taking, we've talked about this before, but let's say this piece of art over my head here was worth something. And so you wanted to put a token around that, and suddenly we would have a token, and I would have a token for 1 unit of art, but kind of cool. I can divide that token in half and give you half, and you could take that and divide it into whatever pieces you wanted and start selling it around. It's really cool, but every single one of those little divisions and subdivisions is another opportunity for the financiers, for the money players of Wall Street to take a little piece of that transaction and nibble at it, right? And then the second thing they love about tokenization is you can't hide any of it, right? It wouldn't be possible for me to just sell this to you for $5, you know, in an alley, right? It would be known and tracked. So now that you can actually really begin to dial up taxes, right? So that, you know, I bought it, paid tax, sell it to you, got to pay tax on that. You sell it to somebody else, got to pay tax on that, right? And so that would be sort of the scheme, is to make sure that everybody's paying their tribute to Caesar in this story, right? DC's got to get its cut. Taxman's got to get his piece, right? So that's really what the essence of tokenization is. It allows you to control assets, take fees every step of the way, and make sure that nothing escapes the notice of the taxman. And of course, if you've done that and you've tokenized, say, Argentinian shale oil output somehow, you can also turn that off at the flick of a keyboard. And so it gives you the opportunity to really control your trading partners and the other people who are sort of enmeshed with you. It's about power and control. Power and control, power and control. It's not about freedom. Anything you might have read in the Declaration of Independence or the Constitution, we the people, life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. This is about how a very few number of people who are unelected can dictate terms of living and commerce to everybody else. And I think we should also call that, but for what it is, it's a form of communism.
Yeah. Here's a headline from Yahoo. U.S. national debt nears $38 trillion, adds $6 billion daily as gold and Bitcoin hit all-time highs. All right. So in conclusion, how should people be preparing?
Very simply, make sure that you can, everything that's on what we call the bottom of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. That's food, shelter, water, warmth, safety, right? Make sure that you can attend to those things. Everybody ought to have a little bit of food stored away. You ought to know your neighbors pretty well. You ought to have the ability to defend yourself and your family. You should have some of your assets out in what we call hard assets. Gold and silver are kind of the easy button in this regard. Now, I don't mean buying gold stocks or GLD, which is a tracking trust, which says nominally you might have some derivative interest in gold. I mean physical gold and silver in your hot little hands. And just please, you have to understand what the game is that's being played so you can have a hope of understanding where this is going. But listen, it's going to be kind of binary. The chance of them sort of managing to herd us all into these digital prisons and sort of click some buttons and make it all work is hubris. It's not going to work. I consider this sort of slavish devotion to technology to be our own Tower of Babel moment. This time we'll get it right. This time we're gods. This time, we got better technology. And it's always the same story. And the Bible's full of this, which is every time humans think they really got it all dialed in, they get a little prideful and a little bit too much hubris, and things have a tendency to sort of break down. We call it the wrath of God, whatever you want to call it. But I really think people need to wake up, start preparing and being resilient, which means being able to attend to their own needs and those of the people around them who they love, and maybe even people they don't know. So that's the challenge right now.
Let's show where people can follow him. Here you go, right here on X. It is at Chris Martenson, spelled Martenson, Martenson, and at peakprosperity.com, peakprosperity.com. Before you go, Chris, this is our first time to interview you since you were at our national conference, right?
Mm-hmm. Correct.
It was great having you with us. So I want to say that. Great having you to the studio and in our home. And it's a pretty intellectual group. The ones that come to the Worldview Weekend are really there to learn, aren't they?
They are, and it was really gratifying. It's always, first off, it's great to be around people who you just sort of can relax into and have any sort of conversation that you think you need to have. You don't have to sort of dodge carefully to find out, if you can say that or not, because that's a mark of our times. There's off limits conversations, and to me, nothing's off limits. I'll talk about all of it. I'll accept some things. I'll reject some things. I'll change my mind. That's the crowd I met there. They're people very open-minded and willing to engage because, hey, that's life, right?
Yeah, that is life. And we're already working on next year's, I think October 23 and 24 in Waukesha, Wisconsin, outside of Milwaukee at the Waukesha Expo Center. But it was great to have you there. In the meantime, folks, visit peakprosperity.com, peakprosperity.com. Chris, we look forward to having you back as always. It's just a wealth of knowledge. Thank you, my friend.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Chris Martenson checking in. Check out his site, peakprosperity.com. And we'll be right back. We have a big announcement, folks, something we've been waiting on for several months, and it's now here. It's called Bella Melt. You were on it for just 1 week when you lost 3 pounds. So in the first week, you lost 3 pounds on this, right?
That is correct.
Your GLP-1 is a natural hormone that's in every single one of our bodies. And your GLP-1 lets you know if you're full. It's a satiety hormone. So when your GLP is working properly, it does help suppress your appetite as well as reduce those cravings. It's a sugar-free fast melt caramel. So what it's going to do best is it's going to reduce your sugar cravings or any other cravings you have in your body. It's going to suppress that appetite. But where Melissa got the most benefit, I think, over the last week was the L-carnitine. The L-carnitine tells your mitochondria, this is where you make, we talked about it before, this is where you produce energy in your cells. It actually tells those mitochondria to burn fat for fuel. We're noticing other people losing up to 7 pounds in the first week. 4 pounds has been about the average. As you lose weight and as you take these Bella Melts, it's going to help lower that blood sugar in your body as well.
All the information is there. MelissaHouseBG.com, MelissaHouseBG.com. Just now introducing for the first time Bella Melt with GLP-1 fast action. Joining me now is David Pyne. David, it's been a while since we've had a good visit with you, a couple weeks, I think. Where are we at? I guess President Trump was supposed to have a meeting in Hungary with Vladimir Putin, but that has reportedly been canceled because what? Putin doesn't want to give up land, and I guess Zelensky doesn't want to give up land, and so they're going to keep fighting. So there's no reason for a meeting. Do I have that right?
Well, actually, I think that Trump actually does want to give up the land. In fact, he's been pressuring Zelensky and EU leaders to accept Russia's demand for the Donbass since before the Anchorage summit. That's really the whole issue here.
But Zelensky doesn't want to give it up.
No, of course, yeah. Zelensky's not going to drop his maximalist demands for not giving 1 inch of additional Ukrainian territory to Russia as the price for a peace deal that secures Ukraine's independence for decades to come. It's been quite a ping pong match here as we've gone back and forth over the last week. Starting with, of course, last time I was on last month on your show, we had Trump was threatening. He was vowing to help Ukraine retake all of its territory and perhaps even invade some Russian territory as well. And then he had he had a little bit of a 180 when he met with President Putin in a phone call. It lasted 2.5 hours. He said it was very positive, very productive. That occurred, just 5 days ago. And he basically, Putin pretty much persuaded him that, peace is in America's interests as well. That we could establish this new geostrategic partnership that Trump has been wanting to establish with Russia. with huge rare earth mineral deals that would enrich the U.S. economy, make us more independent from China, and you get this war, finalized, so that Trump could maybe be nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize next October. And Trump was pretty happy with that, and Putin said, all we need is the Donbass, and we have a deal. Essentially, there's been that deal on the table since before the Anchorage summit that Trump and Putin negotiated, and he keeps allowing Zelensky to veto it. So he met with Zelensky during the infamous shouting match we've been hearing from the Financial Times and other outlets just last Friday, and he demanded that Zelensky accept all of Russia's peace terms, saying it was a good deal for Ukraine, that Ukraine had no chance to win the war, that it was losing, and it would. He conveyed essentially what Putin's ultimatum was. Take this more generous deal that we're offering from the Russian side, or else face destruction. And Zelensky pushed back, and Trump repeated some expletives, and Zelensky pulled out a map to show how important the Donbass region was to Ukraine, and Trump cast them aside. And but then he came out and basically capitulated to Zelensky's talking points, coming out of the meeting saying that it was too complicated to give up the Donbass because Zelensky and the EU wouldn't accept it. So we just needed to have peace along the ceasefire line. And then, of course, since then we've seen Trump cancel the summit. Just yesterday, there was the Budapest summit that he was saying would end this inglorious war. Again, this peace deal is waiting to be signed, essentially. And, he ended up canceling. The reason he canceled it, according to Rubio, was because Russia wouldn't drop its quote unquote maximalist demands for the Donbass region, which Trump himself has been pushing Zelensky to cede for the last 2 to 2.5 months.
So where do you see this all going? Is this going to drag out forever, or are they just going to finally, Russia's going to defeat Ukraine? Because you were listing on your X feed today how much bigger the military of Russia is than Ukraine. How many more have died in Ukraine than have died on the Russian side? So what if you had to guess how this is going to end? How does it end?
Well, it ends in an inevitable Russian victory. As I mentioned in my X post today, Russia is 35 times larger. It has 5.3 times more people. Its army is just in terms of troops in Ukraine, it has 3 times more troops, according to Ukrainian Armed Forces Commanding General Syrsky, with up to 6-to-1 quantitative advantage along critical sections of the front. So what that means is that at any time Putin could order a northern offensive. It could be in the Kharkiv region, it could be in Sumy, it could be in Chernihiv or Kyiv itself. And simply roll up Ukrainian forces in the Donbass region with an envelopment maneuver, similar to Germany's Blitzkrieg of France in 1940. And that's been something that the hardliners have been pushing Putin to do. It's been something that I would suspect Russian generals have been pushing him to do. But Putin is extremely cautious. He's very rational and he's very restrained. And for whatever reason, he's opted not to go, for a quick win and to keep, attriting Ukrainian forces, which, as I've written, is about 6-to-1, Russian casualty advantage, where Ukraine's lost in excess of 2 million troops killed and wounded, perhaps much more than that, whereas Russia's suffered about 350,000 casualties, with about 135,000 killed in action.
All right, let's move over to Iran. The leader of Iran is taunting President Trump on social media, telling him he doesn't have a right to decide which countries have nuclear weapons, and that they have all of their nuclear enrichment program is safe, deep underground. So, what is Trump to do? Is he going to go with Israel and do another strike on Iran, or just let it go?
Well, if you listen to Trump, the Iranian nuclear program was obliterated during the June strikes. Which,
But he also
he said
says we have peace in the Middle East too. So,
well, we have a pause. We certainly have a pause in the Gaza war, and that's all thanks to Trump, and I've been praising him for that. And he's been constraining Israel. With the we don't need to talk about that, but there was of course the ceasefire violations,
right?
And those have been resolved, in favor of peace, thanks to Trump's pressure and sending Witkoff and of course his son-in-law Kushner as well. But in terms of Iran, it's just my belief is that Iran, as we've talked about in the show, Iran likely has nuclear weapons. But perhaps more to the point, their nuclear production capabilities have not been significantly impeded by the B-2 strikes conducted in June. And the reason is, they've still have thousands of centrifuges that they could, in highly enriched uranium, which they were able to withdraw from those 3 sites because Trump gave them reportedly up to 48 hours notice before he decided to bomb them. In exchange for a muted response on the Iranian side, and I think that served us very well. But it also ensured that the impact of our strikes would be quite limited. I used to be an opponent of the JCPOA, but looking back, that's an Iranian nuke deal is far more preferable than bombing strikes that could potentially risk the destruction of tens of millions of American citizens. So. I'm now a supporter of Iran nuke deal. They offered a deal, I think, in March or April, where it's essentially a JCPOA 2 agreement, which would include much more robust verification measures, where we could, would be able to more strongly verify that they're getting rid of their highly enriched uranium. Essentially, it would be perhaps a Iranian nuclear freeze. That's really the best we can do in North Korea as well. But of course, Iran would retain its modest-sized nuclear arsenal as a potential de facto nuclear power.
Tell me where you stand on the bombing of what we're told are narco-terrorists from Venezuela. What do you make of this? We've killed several of them, captured a couple. What do you make of this?
Well, I'm not a fan. I'm not a fan of us sinking boats without any verification that that they are in fact narco terrorists, and even if they were, that's something. That's what Coast Guard vessels are for. We can capture them. We seize their vessels. We can put them under, send them to Guantanamo Bay if we want. And torture them, but why do we need to kill them? I just don't see a need for these drone strikes sinking these boats.
So what's it all about?
Well, I think a lot of it is posturing. He's really he's deployed a substantial force. 4,500 Marines, at least 1 amphibious assault carrier, at least 3 guided missile destroyers. I think maybe a cruiser as well. Some landing ships. He's special forces, I think, are in the region. He's deployed air defense missiles in Puerto Rico, F-35s. So all those are giving him a military option, probably not to fully invade Venezuela, but perhaps even to engage in a raid on the capital of Caracas and try to take out Maduro and have a regime change operation, which would be done at a relative, at least in theory, at a relatively cheap cost in terms of American men and material. I would personally, I'd love to see Maduro out of power. I think having communist Venezuela is a threat to the U.S. I'd love to see it, but I'd love to see it done after we resolve the war in Ukraine, because I think we're really overextended, and we can't just keep starting all these wars. War with potentially nuclear-armed Iran. War with Yemen. Now we're maybe going to do Venezuela, and of course, Taiwan is in the back mirror, and could erupt at any moment.
So, do you think this is about trying to chase China out of our backyard, or it's a regime change to not only get China out of there, but also maybe to get hold of all these minerals and oil and put them on our tokenization ledger as we go to a new form of currency, or a new economic system that's not debt-based but asset-based? What do you think? I mean, usually when you do a war, there's multiple reasons, not one. Are there multiple reasons here?
Yeah, I think every reason you just stated are the reasons that we're doing this. Secretary of State Rubio is, reportedly he's been wanting to overthrow the communist Venezuelan regime for years, perhaps even decades. Of course, he's a Cuban American, so that's understandable. But it's something I've been wanting to do as well. We should be fighting. We shouldn't be fighting wars half the world away. We should be liberating countries from communism here in our own hemisphere as a hemispheric superpower. And that's what Trump's, reported national defense strategy would do. It would convert us. Essentially, we would pull back, not completely, but we would deprioritize and withdraw troops from Europe, the Middle East, and the Far East and Western Pacific in favor of, a strategy where we would focus on the defense of the U.S. homeland, the Western Hemisphere, and the Pacific and the Atlantic, and not necessarily countering China all the way full forward in the South China Sea, which has kind of been the default strategy for decades.
All right. So what do you see? Anything else on your radar for the U.S. that we ought to be paying attention to? How about China, Taiwan? Are we just going to give Taiwan over? Versus, and by the way, is Xi Jinping even in power? What's going on there militarily?
Well, Xi Jinping is never been stronger. I think China is kind of at the apogee of its dominance in that region. We've heard from former director of the U.S. Pacific Fleet Intelligence, Sam Faddis. He's a former U.S. Navy captain, stated that the Chinese PLA Navy rules the waves in this up to the second island chain. So I think by default the U.S. should kind of pull back. We should not be actively engaged in naval and air exercises in that region because in the event of war, any ships in that region would be sunk essentially. Because we're massively overmatched by Chinese powers. Certainly, the Beijing military parade that occurred on September 3rd demonstrated that because they had so many different weapon systems, anti-ship missiles, hypersonic missiles, nuclear hypersonic missiles. I mean, just every type of weapon system you could possibly imagine. And the U.S. just takes so long. It takes decades for us to build develop systems, get the Sentinel ICBM up and going, the Columbia-class submarines. We're still going to have missiles that are, 50 years old in terms of nuclear strategic missile systems. And I just learned yesterday it takes us 2 years just to rebuild a single Abrams tank. So Russia's turning them out like 1,000 to 1,500 a year with brand new T-90M tanks. And we don't even build it. We haven't built a new tank from scratch. I think since I think we have with the Bookers. We have had like 50 Booker tanks that are medium tanks, but those have been canceled. But in terms of Abrams tanks, we haven't built a new one for over 30 years.
All right. So if you want to keep up on all that's happening in all the hot spots around the world, David Pyne's doing it at dpyne.substack.com. You can also follow him on X at America First Con, and as I said, dpyne.substack.com. All right, David, keep us posted.
Thanks, Brandon.
Thank you, David. You too. David Pyne checking in. We'll be right back. We live in uncertain times. In fact, we live at a time when our own governments all over the world are warning us that there could be big problems with our power grid. World War III seems to be right on the horizon. Let me ask you this. Do you have a satellite phone? Should communications go down with cell towers? Do you have a satellite phone to get a hold of that college student or your spouse who travels, whatever it might be, to get a hold of your senior adult parents? We have satellite phones at worldviewtalk.com, and you get the satellite phone for free when you sign up for their very reasonable payment programs for the service. Sign up for the service with a reasonable contract, get the satellite phone for free. Worldviewtalk.com. You'll also find they have, what I now have, which is a solar generator. Yeah, I have a gas generator, an LP propane generator, but what if that goes down? I want to back up to my backup. So I now have a solar generator as well. You'll find them at worldviewtalk.com. Check it out today, worldviewtalk.com. Joining me now is Anni Cyrus. Look at what Laura Loomer put out today. In today's example of vetting gone wrong, Meet Amir Ghalib. Ghalib is the Muslim mayor of Hamtramck, Michigan, and he is the newly appointed ambassador to Kuwait. He was honored by President Trump at the White House, iftar, the other night, likely because of a vetting failure. Trump was likely only told Ghalib got Muslims to vote for him in 2024, but I doubt he was told about Ghalib's radical Islamic background. Am I the only one shaking my head? Ghalib is not someone who should be granted access to President Trump or honored at the White House. And he honestly shocking that a radical Muslim like Ghalib has even been entered or entertained by the White House, let alone granted an ambassador position. As the mayor of one of the most radical Islamic cities in America, Ghalib himself has been hostile toward Jewish people. He expressed praise for Saddam Hussein and has gone out of his way to create Sharia zones in Hamtramck via his role as mayor. For example, under Ghalib, the Hamtramck City Council passed Resolution 2024-51, declaring support for the boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement. That's against Israel. A pro-Hamas Palestinian-led policy that advocates for the destruction of Israel via economic pressure and isolationist policy toward the Jewish state. On from there. He's also refused to condemn the actions of Hamas after October 7th. In a show of support for the Palestinians after October 7th, Ghalib and the city of Hamtramck approved a resolution to give one of its streets an honorary name in support of Palestinians amid the war between Israel and Hamas. Under Sharia, which Ghalib clearly supports, it's permissible to call for the killing of homosexuals. As mayor of Hamtramck, Ghalib and the Muslim majority city Hamtramck voted to exclude LGBTQ flags from city property since the Muslim city majority is anti-gay. Well, I have no problem with that one. Sorry. Ghalib has become a Sharia zone. He has become a Sharia zone. It has under him, where life is unbearable for non-Muslims. And she goes on from there, including they're blasting out the prayer, the call to prayer, because over and over. Wait a minute. How did this guy get? Oh, it's the vetting. Laura seems to be under the impression now it's just all the bad aides and all the bad vetting around Trump. I'm starting to think some of it's President Trump himself. What say you tonight, Annie?
I say no, Loomer, you're not the only one. But I will say I disagree. This is not vetting goes wrong. I don't know why people still think that somehow somebody's giving bad advice to people. That's not true. I agree with your statement, Brannon. Michigan brought Muslim votes for Trump. And Trump is going to return the favor over and over and over. Amir Ghalib, who, by the way, was born in Yemen, immigrated to America. Since he arrived until today, he has been an anti-Semite, but at the same time, he has never hid his devotion to Islam. He has always been an outspoken Muslim. From his campaign to this day, that even though they deleted it and tried to get rid of it, there were comments made by him on his X account, I believe, not just anti-Semitic. I mean, Brannon, this guy literally referred to Jews as monkeys quoting Quran. It's deeper than I mean, Loomer likes to call him radical. It's deeper than, just a Muslim guy. He quotes Quran, calling Jews what Quran calls them. This is not, it's just, again, it's returning favors. Now, why would he be qualified for this position? His ties to Islam is the qualification. It's pretty simple. He'll understand all the requirements of what he needs to do as an ambassador to Kuwait. Though a lot of people publicly think Kuwait is this modern Islamic country, it isn't. Not by definition of policy. Kuwait is not some modern Islamic country. So having a devout Muslim who has ran office in a full Muslim, one of the conquered Islamic cities in America, is a plus for him and for the administration. Pretty simple.
Yeah, pretty simple. All right, let's go to a clip. Here's President Trump on his little friend.
In particular, I want to thank two great gentlemen, the mayor of Hamtramck, Michigan. Hamtramck, how are you, Mr. Mayor? And he's done a great job as mayor, and he's done a great job with his support of us and Mr. Amr Galib. And thank you very much. You was such a tremendous endorsement right at the right time. Your timing was excellent. Thank you very much. And you'll be the next ambassador to Kuwait, and you're going to have a great time with Kuwait. Wonderful people, and it's a great place, so congratulations, really terrific. You're going to love them, and they're going to love you. And they're going to love you. Thank you very much. Congratulations to, as well as the mayor of Dearborn Heights, Mr. Bill Bazzi. Bill, good job, Bill. And Bill actually is going to be the next ambassador to Tunisia, and that's big stuff. Those guys, you're very upwardly mobile. You're doing very well. That's great. You're going to have a tremendous time. Both great countries, and enjoy it.
There you go. There you go, Annie.
There you go. You see, he said it. Brannon, he said it. Thank you for the endorsement. It was very timely. Here's your reward. But here's the question. Who's going to sit in for the two mayors of the two Muslim cities?
Oh, I'm sure.
Again, remember.
They'll find some other. They'll find some other sheet-wearing moron. I mean, this is what's going on in Dearborn. Listen to what's going on in Dearborn. You heard this?
Not a great.
Yeah. Don't worry, folks. That's just the radicals. Yeah, whatever.
Standing in front of Palestinian flags, radicals. Yes. And just to be sure, it is. It's properly translated.
And here is another guy. Have you seen this one, Annie? Look at this one. Here we go.
I caution you of the days to come. Because
this is the People's Conference for Palestine, folks. Okay? Here you go.
Not be easy. There are people among us today who might not be with us next year at this conference.
Why might they not be with us next year at this point? What might they do? Huh?
They might be governing Gaza.
Or they
might be hanging out with their 72 versions when they blew themselves up on the streets.
That's exactly what I was going to say. They might be with their 72 virgins, and you got there before I could. Oh, my word. Yeah, that's why. Yeah. Okay, let's go back to it. Remember, this is a Palestinian conference.
And this is the reality. Because the liberation struggle requires sacrifice. And I know everyone here is prepared to make that sacrifice.
In May 2024, over 100 organizations gathered for the People's Conference for Palestine in Detroit, Michigan. More than 3,000 activists were in attendance. Speakers celebrated the October 7th massacre, called for resistance against the West, and mapped out a vision for the destruction of America from within.
The Palestinians who came to the United States understood their role immediately upon arrival.
We, the movement for Palestine in North America and across the world, are here to fight until victory.
This violent movement has been growing for decades. It's made up of groups including Within Our Lifetime, Students for Justice in Palestine, the Palestinian Youth Movement, and many others. After the October 7th attacks, anti-Israel groups in America were emboldened. They saw the massacre as an opportunity to intensify hostility toward Jews and America.
When I think about the USF, it should burn! Death to America!
As the movement worked nonstop to legitimize the Hamas attack, the activists openly flaunted their hatred of Jews and Israel through protests, vandalism, encampments, and violent assaults, both in the streets and on college campuses. Flags of terror organizations became commonplace in public spaces.
I support Hamas! I am Hamas!
We are Hamas! Yes, we're all Hamas!
Activists celebrated the brutality of the October 7th massacre, drawing inspiration from the barbaric acts of terrorism.
It was exhilarating! It was energizing!
Glory to our martyrs, our heroes who made the ultimate sacrifice.
I salute Hamas. A job well done.
On October 7th, Hamas declared war on Israel. On October 8th, their supporters declared war on America.
And
The goal of the movement is not just to destroy Israel. Their primary target is the U.S. They call America the enemy, the beast, or simply empire.
We're in the belly of the beast. We're in the heart of U.S. empire.
We are here in the belly of the insatiable imperial beast.
Here in North America, in the U.S., the belly of the beast, the heart of empire.
We have to bring down this empire with 1 million cuts.
We will be hitting empire where it hurts most. Bring empire to its knees.
Dismantling the heart of empire is not easy, and it won't be rapid. But we know it's possible.
This panel, y'all, is talking about what is next. To strike at the heart of empire.
The Palestinian American pro-terror movement uses the word resistance as a euphemism for violence. And that resistance is to be accomplished by any means necessary.
You will resist by any all means necessary. All means necessary.
The resistance in all its forms.
Resistance, including armed resistance.
Normalized armed struggle.
They are not terrorists, they are freedom fighters.
Our noble, steadfast resistance.
Conference speakers outlined their strategy for bringing the war home.
I believe our fundamental role is to generate political and social crisis within the American ruling class. Mass mobilizations is the primary tactic. Street shutdowns, bridge and train shutdowns, airport caravans and shutdowns, encampments, building takeovers, targeting of weapons manufacturers, shutting down events.
We will be here in the streets, on our campuses, in our classrooms, in our workplaces every day.
We have made the situation untenable for the empire's ruling classes and the political establishment.
They have created a disruptive movement made up of students and faculty, turning young minds into anti-American extremists.
Our movement has helped transform students into revolutionaries.
Iran, Hezbollah, Hamas, and other factions that fight American hegemony in the region. People who are 18 and 19 years old on campuses truly understand these ideas now.
Protesters target cultural and historical landmarks, seeking to destabilize the foundations of American society. They are openly hostile to law enforcement and engage in violent opposition toward the police. The influence of these organizations isn't limited to universities and public spaces. They've even reached the halls of Congress.
Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib.
We're gonna move Congress, and we're gonna move the White House. We're not going anywhere. Free, free Palestine!
The influence of these violent groups is growing, and they are working towards their goal of dismantling America.
Our struggle is a long struggle, and one that stands on the shoulders of thousands of martyrs and thousands of fighters who have committed and who are committing their lives to lay the ground for the revolution we see ahead of us today.
Gaza tells us to escalate for it. That can mean so many different things, but what I will tell you is we need to start sacrificing.
The threat of violence is not theoretical. In this war of resistance, all Americans are potential targets.
Genocide!
These organizations are determined to achieve their revolution, whatever the cost, by any means necessary.
Resistance, by any means necessary.
If the enemy refuses to die, it must be killed.
There is only one solution.
The Palestinian diaspora in North America has committed its martyrs for this cause.
Students have brought the war home.
It is either victory or death.
Either victory or death.
They're losing their ability to control us. And this means that now the gloves are off.
and quite frankly, anything is possible.
Well, there you go. And that's the Marxists and the Islamists, the red-green axis, Annie.
Did it mention that which organization put this event together, this conference together?
It was called the
American Muslims for Palestine.
People's Conference for Palestine, right?
No, but the organization that put the People's
the American
Conference
Muslims for
together
Palestine, yes.
I'm just going to say this. This organization was established in 2006, Brannon. Coincidence?
No.
Exactly. This organization was established in 2006. There are watch groups that are watching this organization. Taher Herzallah, the bald guy who starts in the dramatic, some of us may not be here next time.
Yeah.
He is the director. He's the boss of that organization. He's the one who started the narrative that United States of America, just like Canada, should issue a arrest warrant for Bibi Netanyahu. And here's where it gets more interesting. Any organization, anybody who has tried to dig into his information, you don't find a year, day, month, or place of birth for this guy. The only thing you find is he grew up somewhere in California. Why? Why is this person so secret? Is he an immigrant? Is he American born? Is he a citizen? Who is he? Why is he the boss? Why does he have the money to put this conference together? In 2024, supposedly based on their own record, they had $1.6 million revenue and their cost was $1.3 million. Where are they getting their money? There is no trace of who's paying, where the money and donation is coming from, and not their care right in front of us. And what do? We give Hamas every day. We give them an extra day to rebuild their soldiers, to recruit more killers, to send those 250 convicted jihadists into our country. And thankfully, nobody even can say we're crazy for saying this, because we just arrested a planner and involved soldier of October 7th here in Louisiana. So that's very possible.
Well, and I wonder how many of those kids will become terrorists, as Alan Dershowitz said. Many of these college students will become terrorists. Is what he said. Some of these college students will become terrorists, and you just heard some of them say things that lead you to believe they're willing to go do some of these things, acts of violence, right? I mean, based on what we just heard them say.
Yeah. They will become. It's the same question of how many Palestinian kids are going to join Hamas. Every single one of them. They did on October 7th. You saw teenagers stealing things from Jewish homes while the people on the floor were still bleeding. I'm sorry, this cult starts from the moment you're born. The moment you're born, it doesn't matter where you're born. Your dad or your granddad will say Allahu Akbar in your ear, and that starts right there. And number one priority of a Muslim is to hate Jews and kill Jews. And then those who support Jews. That's us. Now they have apparently brought the war home. Isn't it funny? They call America home, but they scream Free Palestine. By the way, did you catch Rashida Tlaib saying what I've been trying to tell everyone to pay attention to? He did not say Free Palestine. He said Free Palestine. If you go back and play that 5 seconds of her behind the microphone, you hear her saying Free Palestine, not Palestine.
I got a video to play for you, another one. This is a pastor in Nigeria. They're slaughtering the Christians. The Muslims are slaughtering the Christians in Nigeria. His accent's thick, I know, folks, but listen to this pastor literally standing in the grave of these murdered Christians.
They are tired to be outside performing burial every day. And they expect us to silence. Now, it's an order. Nigerian government came out openly and denied there is no massacre, there is no genocide of Christians in Nigeria. And look at it today. Is there any Muslim here? United Nations, I know you're watching it. American Senate, you are watching what I'm doing, I'm saying here. Special advisor to Trump. Now, please tell Trump to save our life in Nigeria. They are killing Christians in Nigeria, massacre Christians. If they say they kill Muslims, his Muslims are being killed. By who? By Muslims.
Wow. Annie?
Well, as hard as it is for me to say, but my brother in Christ, Trump is too busy saving Muslim lives. He doesn't have time to save Christian lives. We don't have the gold, we don't have the caviar, saffron, opium, or oil to offer him. So our lives don't matter. He's busy saving Muslims' lives. So don't hold your breath.
Because they have the money.
They have the gem, whatever gem you call. They have the crown to give him. They have the lands to give him, the oil and the gold and the, you name it. You know, Middle East is filled and it's owned by Muslims. So yes, Nigeria, definitely Nigeria doesn't have much to give Trump. But hey, he does deserve that peace prize. Remember that.
What's the other things you've been reporting on over at your Substack this week? Anything else?
Yes, a very important piece that will be coming out within the next day or two, but I actually have the 24 pages printed right here in front of me, Brannon. Today, the International Court of Justice of UN concluded on their case against Israel. The topic of this case was obligations of Israel in relation to the presence and activities of the United Nations, other international organizations, and third states in and in relation to the occupied Palestinian territories. And as you can imagine, found guilty on all counts. They called Israel occupier. They told Israel they need to let all aid coming regardless. They said Israel has not been able to prove their case against UNRWA. Therefore, Israel shall continue allowing UNRWA do whatever they want to do.
Which is the UN group in Gaza that had the students celebrating. Some of their students took part in October 7th massacre of Jews, and UNRWA was storing weapons, and I think maybe hiding out some of the hostages.
Yes, and UNRWA is also the organization that has been accused, as they would phrase it on their letter, but proven to also allow some of the aid trucks to be hijacked by Hamas for Hamas soldiers. So I will write on this. I will give the recap, but I strongly suggest everybody, this is easy to find. Just literally just look up October 2025 case of UN on Israel. Read the 24 pages. Brannon, it is so disgusting. The way they phrased everything, if it wasn't me and you, I would be out there joining these Palestinian students too.
Because they're making it so one-sided and full of lies.
One-sided and fluffed up with lies. There is a section on page 4 that when I read, I couldn't. I'm like, how? They noted that October 7th has happened, but here's how they noted it. They said, we note that on October 7, 2023, Hamas and other armed groups in Gaza Strip coordinated an attack on Israel, resulting in death of 1,200 people, and taken 251 hostages, of many whom are still being held hostage after 2 years. After that attack, Israel coordinated a mass military attack on Gaza Strip, causing casualties such as death of civilians. When it's to Israel, it's just people, right? But for Gaza, it was civilians, including many women and children. But no talk of who the 251 hostages were. No talk of the burned babies in Israel. None of that. When it came to Israel, it was like literally 2 lines of what Hamas did, calling them Hamas and other armed groups. Not terrorists, not jihadists, just armed groups. And then the following paragraph explaining that the barbaric counterattack by Israel, the paragraph had 8.5 lines. And this is exactly why we need to focus on UN more. Instead of just saying, oh, UN is a joke, UN is a joke. Guess what? This very joke holds a lot of power, and it's holding a lot of power because our tax dollar is funding it. What happened to America first? Why are you not putting pressure on Trump to stop funding UN, to stop funding Taliban, to stop funding Lebanon? Why are we not putting pressure on him to do that? UN literally painted Israel as this monster in this 24-page document today that when I read through it, I caught myself a few times choked up thinking, I am tired on behalf of people of Israel.
Well, I wasn't going to play all these clips, but I think I have to play them now because they fit with our conversation, because we have to offset all the lies and the propaganda. So if you have a young student, a young adult in your life who's believing all the lies, consider 2 videos. Here's one. Watch this.
There is no two-state solution on the table anymore. Hamas destroyed it on October the 7th, 2023, because the Palestinians were given a de facto state in 2005 when not only every Jew, every Jewish body was removed from the Gaza. And they had 18 years. 18 years, the life of a child to the end of their formal education. They had 18 years. And what did they do with it? Rockets, war, stealing of vast amounts of wealth. And then October the 7th. So anyone who thinks that if you give them another go, everything will be right, is demonstrating, signaling, blaring out their ignorance.
But yet most Americans don't know what he just said. Most Americans don't know this. So how most American pastors don't know this. So how do we expect our children and young adults to know this?
And did anyone send this video to President Trump? I'm not trying to pick on him. He has created the scenario when I have no choice but to pick on him. Every single day on his Truth Social, he's talking tough to Hamas. Disarm or yada yada. Do this or yada. When? This morning, IDF, I think, well, either IDF, one of the Jewish government websites announced that they know for a fact that Hamas is a standing 20,000 strong man, all armed. On October 7th, they were 40,000. Now they're 20,000. And then IRGC came out on Monday and announced that we are sending manpower to both Houthis and Hamas. I think by now they have arrived. If not, they will in next couple of days.
So in other words, this is the, what is it called? The Humda? Is that what you guys called it?
Hudna.
Thank you. Hudna. Where you agree to a peace treaty till you get resupplied and rearmed.
Exactly. And here's where Hudna repeats itself. Maybe that's one of the reasons I'm very not okay today, Brannon. This morning, Grossi, the boss of nuclear agency, put out an announcement. You know what he said? If Iran continues in the speed it's continuing right now, they will have enough enrichment for 10 nuclear weapons. What happened to the victory dance? What happened to the B-2s we dropped and it's over? Didn't Trump just 2 days ago saying Iran's not going to continue building or enriching? They are getting close to have enough material to build 10 nuclear bombs. And Trump is doing the same thing he's doing with Hamas, he's doing with Hezbollah, he's doing with Qatar, he's doing with Turkey, buying them time. Remember, saving Muslim lives during Hamas deal was not the first time. The first time of his second term was saving Khamenei in Iran, pretending to drop those B-2s and achieving something instead of just costing us money and then buying another ceasefire for the mullahs. That is something that I will not let people forget, because when I came out and said we did not even make a dent in their nuclear facility nor their programming, everybody screamed at me. Today, the agency confirmed what I've been saying since July. Iran, the mullahs, the very mullah that he proudly saved his life, he came out yesterday after disappearing for 6 weeks from cameras. He came out yesterday saying, well, we all know Trump is a blabbermouth and he wants to tell everybody he took away all of our achievement and all of our enrichment, but go ask the agency. And this morning, agency put out the release. We're being laughed at by Khamenei at this point, Brannon.
We are. And if you were writing all of this into a movie, the president that has called Erdogan a strong man, a good man,
leader,
the one that is called the president of Syria a good-looking guy, he is appointing these Islamists to ambassadorships, putting convicted jihadists on the Faith Diversity Board, letting Qatar have a facility on Idaho. This, if I were writing this into a movie, the plot twist would be that you would end up seeing multiple mushroom clouds in major American cities from the nuclear weapons that were developed and brought in as nuclear suitcases. And then you have the American people asking how this happened. And yet here we are, and continuing to try to warn. And Sarah Adams and others keep warning that we are accelerating toward an October 7th style attack in our own country. And apparently, if and when that day happens, you have plenty of young people from the clips we just saw that are already being told, some of you may not be here. I have to wonder, is that because you take part in such events?
Yes, they will. They are ready. I have said this for 10 years. The comprehension of the commitment of a Muslim to jihad is not tangibly possible for an American or a Westerner altogether. Mm-hmm. You can't comprehend. I have watched in person at a school, I have watched the commitment of a Muslim to jihad, man or woman, boy or girl. I watched it. I watched the morning march on the streets of, they have no problem. They would love to be shaheeds, martyrs. Their commitment is beyond anything we can comprehend. And that's exactly why they're ahead.
Well, I want to play one more.
Trump is still thinking he can buy them out.
Mm-hmm.
And no,
do
Trump,
a deal.
their commitment. Mm-hmm.
Do a deal.
Yeah.
I think he thinks that their love of money is equal to his, and that money will overcome the differences. But he doesn't understand here's a funny thing. It's not funny when I think about it, but this is, off the cuff. Here he is saying, I don't think I'm going to make it to heaven. I just don't think I'm going to make it. Here's the Muslim saying, we're going to carry out jihad so we do make it to heaven. Trump said, I'm not going to make it, so I'm surrendering that idea. The jihadists are like, no, we're not surrendering that idea. We're going to go full on jihad so we make it to heaven. And he's over here thinking money is what makes the world go round, and that everybody will fall in line if there's enough money put on the table for the deal. And the jihadis are over here saying, no, we got plenty of money. We're using our money to carry out jihad so that we can get to heaven when you've already surrendered your quest for your heaven. It's kind of ironic, isn't it?
Right. And you have one of the Friday prayers in Iran from Ghazvin saying, Trump, you're not going to make it to heaven because you're too greedy. He literally said that on Friday prayer.
That's the leader of Iran mocking Trump.
No, this is one of the Friday prayer imams in Iran.
Okay.
Oh, we're being mocked from every level in Iran.
Well, tell me more about the president of Iran, or the supreme leader of Iran mocking Trump. He's out on social media doing that, isn't he?
Oh yes, he came out 6 weeks. He was posting, but he wasn't on camera. But he decided to do a speech. He sat down, and of course the normal stuff that he does with reading the Quran and all that. But he started zooming in on, first of all, how he's proud of our Hamas brothers for, not standing the ceasefire and standing their grounds and pushing the Israeli soldiers out. Then he followed with Trump. Everybody knows Trump is not succeeding in this deal because he's a blabbermouth who will say whatever it takes to make himself important, including claiming that his B-2s destroyed our progress and facilities of nuclear. Ha ha ha. He literally giggled, his own very evil way of giggle, like Kamala Harris. He giggled, is like, well, you'll hear soon from the agency on the reports, which now our contract with agency also expired, which it did, by the way, early October. The original 2015 agreement was over. It was expired. And Trump couldn't get them back on the table. Anyways, point is, they're not even under those obligations anymore. It's done. So he brought that up saying, we're under no obligation. He can tell his people whatever he wants to tell them, but the agency will tell the world how much progress we have made since his B-2 bombs dropped on
and they're saying he has enough soon for 10 nuclear weapons.
And Grossi this morning reported that if they go with this speed they're going now, let's translate this. Brannon, when Grossi said if they continue with this speed they've been going, that means since 12 days war until today, doesn't it? Then they will soon, he said very soon, they will very soon have enough material to build 10 nuclear bombs. Since June, end of June, June 24th, I think is when he got the ceasefire. Sorry, July 24th. No, June 24th. Until today, he kept telling American people, we abolished their facility. They're never going to resume building. If they start, we do something. They already did it. It's done.
And he couldn't get to it if they wanted to because it's so deep in the ground, right?
Exactly. At this point, they can't. I reported on Kolang Mountain, July 26th, 24th, something. I said, heads up, watch out. This mountain's coming up. They already moved the missing 400 plus kilograms of enriched uranium. Of course, I got attacked by everybody saying you just want to, bury Trump's achievement. But then finally, agency came out and said it. And then our own government a week ago came out saying, we have evidence to know they moved the missing enrichment into Kolang Mountain. And there is no such a technology as of today to even try, let alone reach that area. Another big, huge, historic mistake by Trump that got cheered by Americans when he became the president of peace or peace president. He should have let Israel finish the mullahs. I said it on your show repeatedly. We don't need to take out the nuclear facilities. The new government is going to use it. Let it be. Let them finish the regime.
You did. You did. You sure did. Yep. All right.
And side note, to this day, President Trump has not answered the phone call, email, and letters of the late King of Iran's son, Prince Pahlavi. Just for anybody who thinks Trump knows what he's doing, you're right. He is going to keep the mullahs. But when I published an article saying when Trump played Carter's game, you all got upset. Carter put them in place. Trump is going to keep them in place.
I want to go to one last clip tonight. Again, this is that second video I referred to that we need to make sure we're sharing with our young people to offset all the lies, all the propaganda, including the many, many pages now from the UN about Israel. Here's the latest. This is 4 minutes. It's 4 minutes and 8 seconds. And boy, is it important information.
This debate is about racism and creating a double standard where you make an exception for the Jews. Now, you don't have to support Zionism, but if you are anti-Zionist, if you are against the Jews having a state, you are against the Jews. Mehdi Hassan is lying about what Zionism is in an attempt to win this debate and to provide cover for his own anti-Semitism. We usually hear a series of lies spewed by anti-Semites and anti-Zionists in an attempt to justify their anti-Zionism, and these are the modern blood libel. They are widely believed as the ancient blood libel, that Jews killed Christian children to use their blood for religious ritual, as widely believed and as false. I'm going to take you through 4 blood libels that anti-Zionists rely on. Number 1, the libel of colonialism. Israel is the ultimate decolonization success story. Against all odds, after Arab imperialism, Islamic conquest, and British colonialism, the Jews indigenous to Judea re-established Israel. My family lived under Ottoman and then British colonialism in Jerusalem long before Yasser Arafat, who was born in Cairo, created Palestinian national identity in the 60s. Number 2, the libel of ethnic cleansing. In 1948, when 5 Arab armies and the local Arab population attacked the fledgling state of Israel with the stated intention of annihilating its people, 700,000 Arabs escaped the fighting. Those that remained became Israeli citizens. The Arab population of Israel has increased tenfold. This is ethnic cleansing? No. Ethnic cleansing is what happened to the Jews in 1948 when Jordan occupied the West Bank. Ethnic cleansing is what happened to 850,000 Jews expelled from Yemen, Algeria, Egypt, Morocco, Syria, Lebanon, and Iraq, where they'd lived for thousands of years. Ethnic cleansing left Arab countries Jew-free. Meanwhile, 2 million Arabs live in Israel today. Number 3, the libel of apartheid, because those Arabs that remained in Israel are now 20% of its population, the only free Arabs in the Middle East. They are represented in every area of Israeli society as mayors, army officers, police commanders, members of parliament and the Supreme Court. I served under Salim Gibran, who put both an Israeli prime minister and a president in jail. And those who propagate the lie of apartheid seek to conflate Arab citizens of Israel with Arabs living under the Palestinian Authority, who have an autonomy and should be voting for their leadership. But President Mahmoud Abbas is now in his 19th year of his 4-year term. Number 4, the libel of genocide, the reprehensible smear that maliciously accuses the Jews of perpetrating the very crimes committed against them. October 7 was the latest in a long history of genocidal acts by Arabs against Jews in the Middle East. The genocide libel inverts reality. Hamas has spent 16 years embedding its terror infrastructure in mosques, schools, hospitals, and every second house. Its central military tactic is to use civilians as human shields. And in the face of these unprecedented challenges, the IDF has taken greater measures to prevent civilian casualties than any other army in history, far exceeding the requirements of international law. Genocide is the latest modern blood libel that anti-Semites use to justify their anti-Zionism. And it is central to Hamas's war strategy. Today, its only aim is to survive, and to achieve this with international pressure on the Jews to cease their self-defense. Voting for the opposition supports Hamas in this endeavor by legitimizing, aiding, and abetting their anti-Zionist aim to wipe out the Jews from the river to the sea. Don't stand with the terrorists and anti-Semites. Stand on the side of moral integrity. Stand with the proposition.
Wow. That was a powerful 4 minutes and 8 seconds. Closing comment, Annie.
Absolutely powerful, factual, not touching emotion, sticking with facts. Wow, that was powerful. Good for her. And I hope people do listen. Because one thing that I have come to discover that I will work on, Brannon, did you know there is no such a race as Arab in general? And did you also know that the 14 countries that exist in Middle East, not Asia, Middle East. By the way, you see people, there are 14 countries in Middle East. Making peace between Gaza and Israel is not a peace in Middle East. You got to make peace between all 14 countries, but that's besides the point. 13 out of 14 countries are Islamic countries. There's one Israel in front of them. However, 9 of those 13 countries were created by UK, France, and US since 1920 until today.
We're going to have to do more on this. Annie, the number of people doing broadcasts like you and I do is shrinking here in America. True?
False. They never existed to shrink. As Andy Wood says on one of your great ads, you're the only act in town.
Mm.
I mean it. I'm not saying that because I'm on air with you. I've said it on my own show, on other shows. Name the last time since October 7th until today, the last time anyone who consistently did this, updates, facts, updates, experts, it didn't exist to shrink. I'm sorry, you have at least from October 7th until today, you, me, and your guests such as Sharon Hadian, Usama Dakdok, Andy Woods, Rob Lindstedt, and all, is the only game in town. Everybody chose to either choose silent or become an anti-Semite since October 7th.
Well, I do feel like our network is unique, and one reason why is because we are one of the few, now you pretty much say the only network that's out here doing this, and it's true. And I just wanted to bring that up because end of the year's giving is so important for November, December. I want to plug your studio, but before I plug your studio, I want to plug our foundation. Because folks, if here we are trying to give you information, this show will go back up tomorrow, and you can grab these 2 videos that we just played. And your young people should watch that, 1 minute and 4 seconds by the one gentleman talking about, hey, they had their time in 2005 to have a Palestinian state for 18 years and they destroyed it. And then this woman's 4 minutes and 8 seconds. So you're talking about 5.5 minutes, around 5.5 minutes of hard truth that your pastor likely doesn't know. And if he does, he won't repeat it, because it's a matter of nickels and noses. A few of you do, but most of you don't have pastors that will touch this, much less do they know it. If they do know it, they won't touch it. Only a few. And then we have those in our church pews who don't know this. And then our young people. And it's dependent upon us to tell our young people. So we're doing our best, folks, to give you resources, to resource you. And so we need your support. Worldviewfoundation.com, worldviewfoundation.com. Now, Annie,
can I add something before you?
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to do my own plea to your audience. Well, as you know, I'm part of the Brannon Howse Life family. I've been here for a while.
That's right.
But here's an extra reason for you to, give as end of the year giving to Brannon's Foundation. In 2018, I was very popular. I was invited everywhere from shows to events to speaking engagements. And that is the year Brannon reached out to me through Phil Haney to bring me to Tennessee to do the documentary, The Siege. 2019, things slowed down. 2020, I became very unpopular. 2021, I became Islamophobe. On and on and on. I have dropped. Nobody invites me for their show or radio or speaking engagement anymore. Brannon never dropped me. Brannon never called me to say, listen, I can't have you on my show if you continue criticizing Trump's actions. I cannot have you on my show if you keep coming on and saying there is no radical Islam, there's just Islam. He continuously gave me a platform, and then later on he brought my own show to his network, risking I say the things I say. So when you fund his foundation and he can continue funding his own network, including my show, you're also giving another truth teller who's been through it a voice. So don't look at it just supporting Brannon. When you support Brannon's Foundation, you're supporting me, you're supporting Tamara Scott, you're supporting Andy Woods, you're supporting Patrick Woods, Aaron Lavarco. You're supporting a lot more people. Why? Because Brannon is not some greedy, arrogant man and said, okay, this is all mine. You all go figure out your own thing. He's been enabling a lot of voices. Just remember that when you go to the website to make a donation.
Well, very kind of you. Thank you. Thank you, Annie. And I want to highlight your Live Up to Freedom studio, lutfstudio.com, lutfstudio.com. You can get a lot of great Christmas gifts here. And this helps Annie do the work and the research, okay? So this helps her have the funding. She can either go work somewhere, wait tables at a nice upscale restaurant or somewhere else, or she could go out and work in her studio and make these great items and then offer them for sale in the free market. and use that as her livelihood to support herself so she can live and spend hours doing research where she could go out and get someone to pay her to do a job. Well, she needs to stay in her office and do this work and this research to bring to us. So she is an entrepreneur. She's a tent maker, if you will, like the Apostle Paul was. So here you go. You can do this, buy some great gifts for Christmas and support her at the same time. LUTFstudio.com, LUTFstudio.com. Anything you want to say about this before you go?
Yes, we are running a 30% off Christmas sale across the store. So you get various special discounts if you purchase now. And another thing is, I'm sorry, some of you wrote me saying, I added it to my cart. I came back a few days later. It's not there. Can you remake them? These are genuinely one of a kind. If I even try to remake them, it's impossible. So if you like them, go ahead and check them out, pick them up, or if they're gone, they're gone.
There you go. LUTFstudio.com. Thank you, Annie.
Absolutely. Thank you, Brannon. Be safe.
Thank you for supporting both Annie and us. All right. We'll be right back.
Hello, I'm Brannon Howse. I want to thank you for all your support at wvwfoundation.com that helps make possible pushing out 24/7 content for free. Without your support, we'd have to put it all behind a paywall. But thanks to you and your support through our foundation, we're able to push it out for free as a broadcast service and broadcast ministry of WVW Foundation. Please consider going there and setting up an automatic monthly contribution, or go there and make an occasional contribution. If you prefer to support us through the mail, you'll find our mailing address there at wvwfoundation.com. You can also call and make your contribution over the phone by calling 901-825-0652. That's 901-825-0652. Again, all these details are available at wvwfoundation.com. Thank you for your support as we try to help people around the world understand the times through the lens of a Christian worldview.
Joining me now is Tom Littleton. I want to talk about Peter Thiel. Isn't he the guy over there at Palantir? Peter Thiel, who's obsessed with the idea of the Antichrist and building the system that will stop us from having either Armageddon or Antichrist. Remember, Armageddon or Antichrist, or there's a third option, this system he's building. And he's the guy over at Palantir, and he's been he held his 4 classes on the Antichrist. Well, he seems to be, I think, from what I'm hearing, big time into pumping money into what are supposedly, quote, Christian, end quote, nationalist agendas. I want to learn more, and Tom Littleton joins us as our religious Trojan horse reporter. Faith-driven investors, halftime. Solving the world's greatest problems, as Peter Thiel resourced alongside the Bible. Tom, welcome back to the broadcast. Thank you for being with us. And I know you've been spending many, many months researching Peter Thiel and his funding of conservative groups, Christian groups, and really pushing the Christian nationalist movement. And for the audience, would you please explain the difference between many of our audience who we believe in borders, our own language, our own history, our culture, our own laws, not universal globalist laws, our own currency, not a global currency. You know, we believe in those things that are unique to us as a nation. Describe the difference between what most of us believe that are watching this broadcast now and the nationalism that's being pushed by Peter Thiel. How's it different?
Well, this goes back to NatCon, an organization that was pulling together some evangelical voices that Thiel has been a part of for a while, and they hold national conferences. And actually, he's a libertarian, and like some other quote-unquote conservatives, and he's Catholic, as I understand, who's now self-identifying as Christian. There's some clear distinctions between the impression that they're giving in the marketing, but and the reality. But the Christian nationalist message, you and I began to warn against it, compared to the idea of being pro-America, pro-Constitution, patriotic. Those ideas, which are sort of central to MAGA and it's the momentum that MAGA has and the galvanizing that Trump has done of evangelicals. But alongside of that, healthy patriotic, America first, protect our borders, let's push these progressive agendas out of the way and reverse some of this craziness we've seen through recent administrations. That idea is for a strong America, but not for what is being dubbed as Christian nationalism, which is generally, in a Christian sense, is embraced by people who are amillennial and who have a skewed eschatology and believe that they're going to usher in the kingdom of God by establishing a Christianized America. And they even see revival in that lens, that if we're going to bring America back, we have to revive it as a Christian nation, which they assert was the way it began. But we're seeing Teal come into play on every front. And he's very tied through NatCon to significant leaders who are promoting Christian nationalism, like Doug Wilson, we reported about a lot, and also Albert Mohler. And then a lot of their younger disciples, people like William Wolfe and some of these younger, more zealous and outspoken Christian nationalists. Most of these guys are seminary guys who have opened these little boutique organizations like the Center for Baptist Leadership. We don't know where the funding is coming from those, but they've had these connections through NatCon to Teal and to that network. So those are the kind of things I'm keeping a very close eye on, and have even engaged a few of the people on the fringes of that movement. They're even beginning to colonize and build Christian communities and buy up old towns and start building Christian nationalist communities like the Amish or something. It's really getting strange. And we see those people had courted Charlie Kirk and his organization Turning Point Faith, which was started around 2022. Those two organizations were merging from a lot of indications. And we know that Kirk had some ties to Peter Thiel himself. And so we look at this this presence that is sort of ubiquitous. It's everywhere you turn. So we're still looking for the money trail, but this significant movement with the faith-driven investors, you and I have reported on that before, and now we see not only does he have one of the Palantir guys involved, he is also in the wings with his book being resourced. And you talked about his Antichrist lectures. He actually did 4 of those lectures on the Acts 17 collective that was started by a guy, Trey Stevens, and his wife, Michelle, who are actually part of this faith-driven investors movement now. What has changed since we last reported on this faith-driven investors is that they announced a merger with Bob Buford, who brought the Drucker legacy into the Christian church and through an organization called Leadership Network. They brought him in with his halftime since Buford had died. They announced a merger of faith-driven investors and the Halftime Institute. Now, if you recall, years ago, we reported on this. I'm going to hold it up where people can see it. This book, The World We Want, is a globalist organization's book, basically telling you this is what we're going to do. This is the world that we want. These are people who work closely with the UN, and their goal here is to manipulate philanthropy. It says new dimensions in philanthropy and social change. You know what social change means?
Social justice.
Social justice, exactly. But Buford said in this book that he could deliver legions of wealthy Christians primed to become big-time philanthropists. Now, that was said to a non-Christian, to a globalist, to a person working with the UN, with their organization and the world we want. And he made that boast that he could deliver these legions of wealthy Christians. And that organization, Halftime, was the way he had primed Christians for this philanthropy. That organization now, as of 2024, has merged into Faith Driven Investors, and Faith Driven Investors has Thiel's resources alongside the Bible and one of Thiel's main guys completely embedded and contributing to this movement. So we're looking at a significant change. If you recall, we also pointed out in this movement that, all of these donor advised funds and faith-based giving and investing, these guys have gone after the philanthropy, but now with faith-driven investors, they're actually going for the other 90%. They boasted that. And one of their members, Chuck Bentley, formed what was called the Christian Economic Forum. If you recall, when I discovered that, you and I both were just blown away that they had created what he called a Davos for Christian leaders. And he was inspired by World Economic Forum and built this thing on the template of that. But now the single biggest change that we see, we could see the social justice in the shadows. And the New York Times had covered this faith-driven investors movement. But we could see that they were pushing social justice through the New York Times article. It was sort of in the shadows, but now they are full on promoting a message and an organization as part of faith-driven investors called Solving the World's Biggest Problems. And these are in keeping with the peace plan that Rick Warren did, also a Drucker disciple. And they are pushing this idea that they're going to work with the United Nations. They said they're indebted to the United Nations and to the Sustainable Development Goals to help them outline and identify and strategize this solving the world's greatest problems. 32 of them they've identified with your money, with Christians' money. And so this whole investment movement, and they also have an entrepreneurial wing and then a student wing. All this is being pushed into the Sustainable Development Goals and Agenda 2030, and they're completely open about it.
So in other words, we're taking off where they're picking up where Rick Warren kind of left off with his global peace plan. We're transforming the churches big time in 2008. It just really kicked into high gear. Churches becoming more about nickels and noses, growing, offering the culture a church that they can feel comfortable at. And then as you bring in more people and have more resources, you use those resources for social justice, social change. You maybe even start a nonprofit off to the side of your church that can then take government money as partners with the government, as long as you don't pass out tracts or Bibles. The church thinks you're doing ministry, but what the church leaders have been taught is if you start a separate sister organization from the church, a 501c3 that you do dental work or healthcare of some kind, then you can get government money as public partners with the government and really make even more money than you are from people that are tithing to your church or giving money to your church. So you're really setting up the basically your funnel of, hey, let's make money on contributions and then let's make money on partnerships with the government, but blend it all as being doing the work of the Lord. But what you're really doing is the work of the devil, building a social justice kingdom on earth that you call Christianity, right?
Right. And to imagine that all these venture capitalists like Thiel and others, this Palantir guy that's working with them, Trey Stevens, these guys are actually, they're actually forming a narrative that helps people who are willing to let go of an eternal gospel and a pro-Israel, I might add, view of the church and exchange that through what they are promoting here is not only the church giving, but actually investing your goods, your assets into their scheme to address those needs. I mean, if you look at some of their 2035 goals on some of these links, they outline about 10 things that they're seeing as achieved. And one of them on number 8, I have a picture of it in the article. It actually says that they are transferring wealth. By 2035, they're talking about $2 billion a year of wealth being transferred. And if you read that, it says the great transfer of wealth and business ownership hit right as the momentum was building. This is projecting the future, spoken in the future sense in 2035, accelerating the trust of missional movement owned brand caused many families to trust the track record of a team today more than the uncertainty of later generations in their will and estate. So what they're saying, you're going to leave your money to these guys instead of your heirs because you've learned that you can trust them more. I'm not buying that, but especially with these guys signed in and signed on to the UN Sustainable Development Goals. They are going to be harvesting a great deal of Christian wealth, which is God's resources that should be in the true work of the kingdom, in the true work of the church, and spreading the gospel, not spreading the values of the United Nations.
And so, of course, what we're trying to do here again is warn people to be very leery of where you give your money and to understand that these folks, many of them are infiltrating what was once conservative evangelical Christianity, and they're trying to redirect it toward really more emphasis on the material, not the spiritual, more emphasis on building social justice programs versus the preaching of the gospel, correct?
Right. All this is equity driven. Everything the United Nations is doing is trying to bring about a level playing field by bringing the West and the free market economies down and redistributing that wealth, transferring that wealth. And you and I have talked again and again about how the guys who run these Christian financial organizations are more driven by accessing the baby boomer trillions in wealth that they know is about to transfer. And so they're basically telling you in this 10-year out projections, hey, people came to trust us more than they trusted their heirs and future generations. So they're not just trying to get your giving, they're trying to get your estate.
So in other words, don't leave it to your children or grandchildren, give it to them.
Leave it to us. And see, here's the problem with that. There's a group called the National Christian Foundation that they also acknowledge that they are indebted to. That was started by Larry Burkett. It's located in Georgia. That organization has a BlackRock former manager who's also on the board of this Solving the World's Greatest Problems, working with these guys, with faith-driven investors. Those guys have incorporated a narrative here, much like the peace plan. And, you and I discovered when the peace plan was launched, that was 2005, they had Bill Gates and the United Nations in tow in this event where that was launched by Rick Warren in New York. And it was a global health initiative. And how can a preacher hook up with a guy who's working with the United Nations and funding abortion and its global agenda through the United Nations to the tunes of hundreds of millions of dollars? And so we're being very gullible if we think that we can synchronize the United Nations goals and the outcomes that they seek, because the Agenda 2030, as you've covered, you've had so many guests cover it, we come back to it very often. They do want to integrate the church and they want to integrate Christian wealth into that agenda. They're worried about guys like you and me. I mean, the guy who works with National Christian Foundation that I mentioned here, he had a young pastor from New York where he lives call me and try to diffuse my suspicion of his involvement in it. That's the guy, Bob Dahl. And I'll just say that's been a couple of years ago. And this guy's on a lot of TV outlets and discussing finance and stuff. But there was a young guy who went to bat, young pastor that knew him, was in a couple of organizations and societies with him. and he wanted me to rethink my position on the contribution of Bob, which Bob is on the Lausanne board, and he's also the Lausanne movement. He's also on the board of the National Christian Foundation, and he's on this board with this Faith-Driven Investors with us Solving the World's Problems. So these guys are very professional money managers, and so are the people coming out of Palantir. We're looking at, that Palantir has made most of its people at the ground level and the founders, it's made them all billionaires, some of them multi-billionaires in the recent months. I think Peter Thiel has added some $17 billion to his wealth. So they have a lot of money to prime the pump and make this thing appear to be succeeding, and people want to put their money where it's working, and if there's this groundswell of money going into it, then it must be the right thing. And so people are not aware that a lot of this stuff is being primed, but they're going to pull this donor money away and ultimately be looking to Christians to be the ones who they've exploited to support it, in my opinion. And so we have to step back from this stuff and be very sober. And first of all, say, what am I supposed to do from a spiritual perspective with what God has entrusted to me and my family? Well, first and foremost, we should be looking for eternal purpose, things of eternal value to invest our resources and our giving as God leads into, things that will have outcomes for the gospel, for transformation of human hearts, not seeking to end human trafficking and open borders and address poverty. The way they want to end the problems of most of the world's population is decrease the population. We know that very clearly. So we can't be a part of that and being fooled into thinking that that's serving the gospel. It isn't.
Yeah. And we're opposed to open borders, we're opposed to sex trafficking, but don't confuse that with the gospel. We can walk and chew gum at the same time, right? But we don't replace one with the other. And isn't that Satan's goal, to get us to take what is good and replace it what is the ultimate best, right? And think that we're doing God's work because we're doing all these moral deeds, but we somehow have left out the gospel. And you can save people from horrific situations, but if they die and go off to hell for eternity, what have we really done for them when we didn't share Christ with them? And so we can't replace moralizing good works with the ultimate Great Commission. We can do both. The problem is, with a lot of these guys, they don't know the gospel, the Great Commission. They don't want to promote it. And so many people are being led into believing that is the Great Commission when it's not. I hope you'll go visit his website, 30piecesofsilver.org, 30piecesofsilver.org. As always, Tom, thank you for your updates.
Thank you, man. We'll talk soon.
Sounds good. Tom Littleton checking in. Check it out tonight, folks. 30piecesofsilver.org. All right, that's our broadcast for tonight, folks. Remember, we're brought to you by you. Roll the music, guys. Let's call it a night. Please consider going now to worldviewfoundation.com, making a contribution of any size. We are looking for more regular monthly contributors so we can have a little stress taken off, because we know what's coming in each month because you've set up an automatic contribution. Never think that your $5 or $10 a month doesn't count, that we don't need it, it won't make a difference. That's not true when it's added to the support of so many others. So thank you for going now to worldviewfoundation.com. Till next time, I'm Brannon Howse. May God save America. Take care.
Faith, spiritual values, moral issues, government, economy, education,